Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
An expensive foreign car stopped at the gate of the city cemetery. The guard, recognizing the owner of the car, ran out to greet the important visitor. "Charlie, are there any workers here? I'm gonna need some help. I want to clean up Emily's grave." A young man in an expensive suit came out of the car, leaning on a stick. "Not before you," Alex Peterson Charlie replied. "It's been almost a year. Have you lost weight? Are you sick?" "Boredom. Both, Charlie." Both Alex answered thoughtfully and headed toward the tombstones. He had no strength to walk to his wife's grave, but overcoming his weakness, he walked carefully, stepping and leaning on his stick. "Don't worry about the workman," the watchman shouted after him. "I'll send him to you as soon as he's done with his business. His name is Timmy." Alex nodded his head and moved on. Carefully stepping over the unevenness of the path, he was feeling particularly unwell today. But Alex put it down to the excitement of the sorrowful memories. Charlie stood for a moment, looking back at the Alex he remembered forever. He'd never remembered such a lavish funeral in his life, and he'd worked as a cemetery caretaker for 30 years. That day, a young woman, Alex Chandler's wife, was being buried. The crowd was enormous, and there was an ocean of flowers. The mahogany coffin was carried on his hands, and behind him the husband walked, grief-stricken. As they began to fill in the grave, Alex suddenly climbed down and lay down beside it, asking the men to bury him with his wife. Several men dragged the dying Alex out of the hole as he sobbed and screamed the name of his beloved. He had to be held down until the ambulance paramedics arrived and heavily sedated him. And then he only cried and complained bitterly to his Emily. "Who did you leave me for?" The men around him, seeing such heartbreaking grief, could not hide their tears. And Alex's subordinates were shocked by the behavior of their boss, who at work was considered a tough and demanding, but at the same time a fair manager. Therefore it was they, his colleagues and friends, who later ordered a sculpture for his grave from a famous sculptor. It was a figure of an angel made of white marble. A beautiful girl, very similar to Emily, sat on the pedestal and looked into the distance. This gift pleased the grieving Alex, and after the funeral, he often went to the grave and told his wife how his day was. It went on like that for 2 months. Then Charlie noticed that Alex had stopped visiting the deceased. It surprised the watchman, but then he accepted it. And then today, Alex showed up again. "Hello, my love," he said quietly and stroked the angel's hand. "I'm sorry I didn't show up for a long time. I had a lot of work to do. But I think about you every day. See, I brought your favorite orchids. All your flowers in the house are fine. Don't worry. The maid takes care of them. I had to hire an au pair. You know how it is. I can't do it without you. She's also a good cook. Not as good as you, of course, but it's good, so I eat well. Oh, if I knew how you were, and if there was anything there, I'd feel better." Alex Peterson looked around. The monument was covered in dust. The sculptures, installed almost a year ago, had wilted, and the grave mound itself was overgrown with grass. The fence needed painting.
And he needed a bench to sit on. Standing was a little hard for him.
"Good evening," came a cheerful voice from behind him. In front of Alex Peterson stood a young man about his age, wearing worn work clothes. He was just as tall, but more muscular, and ruddy cheeks from working outdoors. In short, a big guy. Unlike Alex, who, looking at the man, was a little jealous of his energy. "Yes, there is a lot of work here," Alex Peterson answered and looked at the gravedigger. "Don't look at me like that. I don't drink. Only on holidays, and then a little." The worker guessed what the client was thinking and quickly switched to informal communication. "My name is Timothy. You can just call me Timmy. I'm not judging." Alex Peterson somehow blushed, finally giving himself away. "The main thing for me is that the work was done well." "My name is Alex," the man said, and they shook hands. Timmy was surprised. What a weak handshake for a rich man, but he didn't show it. He must be sick. Charlie said your wife was buried here, Timmy began, writing down in his notebook all the wishes for the work to be done. What happened to her? She died young. How old was she? Emily was 30, Alex answered and wiped the angel's face with a handkerchief. She died in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. His truck swerved into oncoming traffic and hit her head on. She didn't stand a chance. When the police called me and invited me to the identification, I was in negotiations with business partners, which I had been chasing for a year. What happened after that? I don't remember very well. It's all a blur. I saw my wife in the coffin, a little blue stocking on her temple, and Emily was gone. And no other injuries on the body. This angel was made to look like her. Too bad, she was beautiful, Timmy said quietly, gazing at the sculpture. I probably would have died of grief. How did you live through all this? I don't really live, Alex said quietly. He looked back and looked at his new acquaintance with interest, as if he had met his soulmate. Something inside whispered that Timmy was a man who wouldn't let him down. Those words touched Timmy to the very core of his heart. So much sorrow in Alex's eyes. I won't charge you for the work, he said. I'll help you for nothing. And then, catching his eyes, he added, I know you're rich, but I won't take any money. I can't. Do you understand? Alex nodded and turned away. He didn't want a stranger to see his tears. When Timmy realized what was going on, he pretended not to notice and started pulling weeds. But I'm going, Alex said. Here's my phone number. Call. Exchanging contacts. The men said goodbye. Returning back, Alex suddenly felt a surge of strength. It hadn't happened for a long time. For 10 months. So he decided to drop by the office. Colleagues, seeing the boss, smiled at him and waved their hands in greeting. It was obvious that he was a rare guest here. Alex managed the company remotely. He was assisted by his permanent assistant, Willie Stevenson. What, Alex? You look better today, not so pale. The first thing he asked Alex, having entered his office. Colleagues were happy to see you, said to go and ask how you were doing. Yeah, and stuff. Thank you, Willie Stevenson, Alex replied. It's nice that you and the others care about me so much. Today I finally went to Emily's grave, hired a worker there. He's going to do everything. And I felt better, like Emily had given me strength. So I thought I'd stop by and do some work, help you out. It's hard enough without me around here. I see sales are down. That worries me. Don't worry, we'll get through this, Willie Stevenson said. It's not that bad. There's money. People want to work. There's no staff turnover. And that's the most important thing. Well, why do you feel better? That's good. That employee you're talking about, can you trust him? He didn't take any money, and you're sure of him. You know what? Why don't I send my guys over? And they'll set up a hidden camera, and you can check in on him at any time to see how he's doing. It's embarrassing. He seems like a nice guy. I don't want to be insulted by mistrust. I like Timmy, a simple and hard-working man, and most importantly, there aren't many of them these days, Alex replied, embarrassed. Trust but verify, Willie Stevenson said, raising his index finger. And Alex agreed to the proposal. His mood was elevated because the weakness and dizziness had receded, and he accepted the invitation of the staff to have lunch with them. To Alex's surprise, his appetite allowed him to eat half of a veal meat dish, something he couldn't afford before because of his health problems. Poor Alex was simply not retaining food. The doctors had fought to solve the problem, but other than baby food, he couldn't eat anything. Now some meat. This was a real victory for him. Willie Stevenson was genuinely pleased. He wanted to think that all of Alex's bad things would be behind him, but he was wrong. In the evening, when Alex returned home, an hour later he had a headache, fever again, and his strength began to leave him, as if some unknown hand clutched his heart and did not let him breathe. He was ready to give everything for that evening with colleagues, where he was nice and cozy. There was laughter and jokes all around, and people's kind looks were fixed on him. Maybe this house is to blame, Alex thought to himself. What if it became my enemy after Emily left? No, she and I were happy here. We wanted to have children, but we didn't have time. We thought it wasn't time yet. Alex Peterson, will you be having dinner, too? Jessica asked thoughtfully when she came into the living room. I have a meat dish with vegetables. No, I don't want to. I had dinner with my coworkers, celebrating a victory. And now this dinner has something against me, Alex tried to joke, but he cringed at the pain in his stomach. But your doctors have forbidden you to leave home for a long time. His assistant reassured him. It's dangerous for your health. Don't go out for long periods of time. It affects your health. I don't know, Alex replied. I was out of town today at the cemetery. Decided to check on Emily. I was very tired for such a long time, but after an hour it felt much better. Maybe it's her giving me strength? Yeah, that's crazy, Jessica argued, and I could hear the consternation in her voice. The doctors strongly advised you to avoid long-distance travel, much less driving yourself.
What if you get sick on the way? What then? Well, then I'll be next to my wife and say hi to her, Alex replied and grinned. To be honest, I'm already tired of all this. No medication helps, can't leave the house. They won't put me in the hospital, since all my vitals are normal. Then what's wrong? Why am I so bad? It's been almost a year now.
Jessica remained silent. She quietly closed the door and went to water the flowers, the only legacy left from Alex's wife. The entire house was buried in greenery. On the second floor of the mansion, in the very center, under a glass dome-shaped roof instead of a living room, was a flower greenhouse. What kind of flowers were there in it? Vines descended from the high ceiling. Seedlings were arranged in tiers like pyramid gardens. Family friends, knowing about Emily's passion, considered it their duty to bring back a cuttings of some flower from foreign trips. You guess what I brought you back from India, Willie Stevenson once said, holding a small fragile leaf behind his back. Is it a parrot's beak, marveled Emily. She was happy with such gifts, which she took in her hands like a fragile treasure and raised like her own children. Some of the flowers even had names. The pride of the mistress of the house was several dozen varieties of orchids. Here in the greenhouse every day Alex liked to visit, remembering the happy days spent with his beloved. That's why Jessica had a huge responsibility not to endanger any of the owner's flowers. When Alex was looking for a home assistant, the main criterion was the ability to take care of plants, including tropical ones, and cooking and everything else in second place. Jessica was that person. She cooked mediocrely, but she knew all kinds of roses and other exotic plants, the names of which can break the language. After a week of work, Jessica proved to be a knowledgeable and responsible person who could be trusted. With her arrival, the house seemed to glow with new colors. In addition, Alex was impressed with her ability to turn his wife's unattended garden back into a blooming paradise. And let's put comfortable seats in the center of the greenhouse, so you can enjoy the aroma of flowers and plants, and relax after a hard day's work. Jessica suggested once. That's a great idea, isn't it? Alex rejoiced. Since then, the greenhouse became the favorite place of the owner of the house. The caring advice of his hands was transferred here. Photos of Emily, in which she was happy next to her husband. This corner of memories warmed Alex's soul. He never forgot his sweet Emily for a moment. One misfortune overshadowed Alex's joy, the gradual fading of strength and terrible pains in the stomach. If anything, I'll be in the greenhouse, he said, and headed for his most favorite spot in the house. Okay, I'll just water the flowers, the maid said, and brought a beautiful flower into the conservatory with bright red balls with ornate, fuzzy blue threads sticking out of them. What is it called? I haven't seen it before, Alex asked. It's an earth paradise, Jessica replied succinctly. It likes to breathe by the open window in the fresh breeze. So periodically I take him out for a walk and put him on the windowsill. And you don't remember it because it has grown and become so beautiful. Your wife planted it when it was very small. Now I've put it back where it belongs with its fellows. Thank you, Jessica, for caring so reverently for these plants. It means a great deal to me, he thanked her. It's no trouble to me, the maid replied. Thank you so much for taking me on such a good job. The next day, Alex received a call from Willie Stevenson. Alex, surveillance on your wife's grave has been set up. I'll send you the password now, and you can watch the landscaping work being done. You know, what I really wanted was to keep you from being bored at home. Here at least you can see everything with your own eyes and not worry about anything going wrong. Yeah, that makes sense, Alex agreed. My health is failing me today, so I'm staying home, but I'll be able to spy on someone I trust. All thanks to you. Never in his life had he ever had to spy on someone on camera. Gaining access for surveillance, Alex tapped into the broadcast. What he saw pleased him. Timmy was working with such enthusiasm, as if this job was some kind of exam for him. He cleanly pulled all the weeds, dug the beds, planted the flowers that had been delivered to him on Alex's orders, and the beds were painted white. The marble angel Timmy wiped down as carefully as if his life depended on it. Shame on me for not trusting Timmy, Alex thought to himself. I should give him a gift after all, since he won't take money. At that time, Timmy began to dust off the portrait on the pedestal of the monument. Alex was about to turn off the camera to put the finishing touches on his work, but then a strange incident caught his attention. As soon as the frame of the portrait moved slightly, a small bag fell out from under it. Timmy noticed it too and picked up the unusual find. It was a note wrapped in a plastic envelope, apparently to keep rainwater or snow from getting on the paper. Timmy unfolded the note, began to read, then quickly looked around, picked up his tools, closed the wicket behind him, and left. "Hey, where are you going?" exclaimed Alex Peterson into the cell phone camera, as if Timmy could hear him. "What does it say? How is that even possible? Who texted my wife? Oh my God," putting her on the phone, but it kept ringing off the hook. And Alex couldn't get Timmy on the phone for a long time. His excitement was making it hard for him to breathe. His heart was pounding desperately and was ready to jump out of his chest. Alex had never regretted being sick so much. Otherwise, he would have run to find Timmy, who hadn't even bothered to call. Anger at the absent-minded assistant was eating him up from the inside. It was probably what gave him the strength to get downstairs, get in the car, and drive to the office. "Hello, Alex Peterson," greeted his secretary, and was surprised by the silence of the chief, who always said hello, found out how her grandson was doing in school, and now, with a stone face, passed by, as if a stranger. In fact, Alex was in a hurry, if his slow, limping gait could be called that. He was heading for someone who could solve the mystery of the note. "Hello, Tony," Alex said, stepping into the small room at the end of the hallway. "I need your help." Tony looked at the supervisor and nodded his head. Tony was a taciturn man in general, but a lot of people thought he was strange. When he'd come to apply for a job at Alex's company after graduation, the HR people had turned him down, thinking the kid didn't have much experience. It was only the head of the company who recognized the stubby, snub-nosed guy as a technology genius, ordering him to return Tony and give him a job as deputy head of the cybersecurity department. "Tony, can you read what the note says?" Alex asked, holding out a flash drive. He silently took it and worked his magic on it for a couple minutes. After another moment, he printed out a sheet of text. "The handwriting on the note is unsteady and choppy," Tony interrupted his silence. It was either written by a very upset woman or a child. Alex picked up the piece of paper with trembling hands, where the scribbles written in ballpoint pen were clearly too wound. "Hello, you don't know me, but I know you. Where are you?" She promised me. "Take me, okay. My address is 34 Mayflower Street." Knocked twice. "What is this?" Alex asked himself. "I don't understand anything." "You know what there is to understand," Tony said. "We have to go to the address. Do you want me to go with you? You look a little pale." "I don't know what's going on." "No need. There's a lot of work to do." "You've done me a good favor." "Thank you. I'm glad I brought you into our company then." Tony cracked a smile. "Come on." "Thank you." As the satisfied chief walked past the secretary, as if seeing her for the first time all day, he asked, "Good afternoon, Jessica. How's your grandson? Did he get in another fight at school?" "Good afternoon, Alex Peterson. I'm fine. Thank you." The secretary said hello for the second time. Alex smiled back and left, leaving the assistant puzzled. And by late afternoon, rumors were flying around the office that their beloved boss wasn't himself. Tony was the only one who knew what was wrong. Alex headed to the address given in the note. He couldn't wait to see the man who knew his wife so well. He also wanted to punch Timmy in the nose for hiding the note. When the car stopped near the small house on the corner of the street, Alex Peterson saw that a man was already knocking on the door twice, as the note said. Alex hurried as far as his strength allowed towards the mysterious house. The stranger turned around. It was Timmy. "Oh, you insolent bastard. How dare you not give me the note?" Alex exclaimed and grabbed him by the scruff of his shirt. Timmy easily freed himself from Alex's weak grip and, seeing that he was losing his balance, managed to support him. "You've got it all wrong, haven't you?" shouted the offended Timmy. "I found that note by accident. I didn't want to worry you. You're so sick. I just wanted to find whoever wrote it and bring him to you. Here, take this paper." And Timmy held out a piece of theater paper. Alex took it carefully, as if it were a cherished jewel. Both of them stood in silence and looked at the scribbles. "Why are you guys fighting?" They turned around and saw a frightened boy of about 9 years old with eyes huge with fear. He was unkemptly dressed, obviously neglected, looking like a vagrant. His cheeks were overgrown, his hands were dirty, and his shoes were begging for porridge. Yet the whole appearance of the boy was pleasing. He had a horsey, unformed figure, red-haired, covered with freckles, but with a kind face. He had grown out of his shabby pants long ago, which made his whole appearance seem even funnier, like a character from a Rowlash. "We came here because of this note," Alex said quietly, "and we're not fighting at all. We just haven't seen each other in a long time. So we're hugging," Timmy confirmed jokingly. "We wanted to see if it was a prank. There's something written in the note, but we can't tell you yet." And the men waited anxiously to see if the boy would fall for their trick, and the boy, taking everything at face value, answered, "I've stopped being afraid. You don't have to tell me. I know it was me who wrote it." That's it. Alex and Timmy looked at each other. "I wonder how that boy knows Emily." And as if he understood their mute question, he said, "Come on in, I'll tell you all about it." When they went inside, Alex noted to himself that either homeless people or drinkers lived here. The whole house had an old iron bed with dirty mattresses, pillow feathers sticking out, and a single blanket. There were a couple of chairs lying on the floor. There were empty vodka bottles on the table, dirty dishes, and only half a loaf of black bread, a couple of slices of dried sausage, and a pickle. "Don't touch the sausage and cucumbers, or I'll be beaten again when my stepfather comes back and sees that there are no snacks," warned the little master, "if you want to eat. I have cookies and bread." "What's your name?" "I'm Uncle Alex. This is Uncle Timmy," said Alex. "And I know your name is Alex Peterson. My name is Charlie," answered the boy. "I live here with my stepfather. I'm tired of living with my stepfather, who says it would be better if I died instead of my mom." Alex Peterson froze in surprise, as if Bobby had said, "Sure, I'd love to." He hugged the boy, and he cried. Apparently the stress of losing his mother and then Aunt Emily, who had been a ray of hope for the boy, was making itself felt. "What's your stepfather going to say?" Timmy asked. "He'll probably be looking for you, won't he?" "No, he won't," answered Bobby briefly. "I once sat on my mom's grave for 3 whole days, and he didn't even notice I was gone." "Yes, and now he's in town looking for money for a bottle. Then he'll find vodka to drink. He'll be with his drinking buddies. They fight and fight so much that I'm afraid to sleep. I hide in the storeroom, and there are mice running around." This story made Alex Chandler's hair stand on end, and his ailment seemed nothing compared to what this little boy was experiencing every day. And then Alex felt that for a whole hour he felt neither pain nor weakness, and that made him happy. "It looks like Emily is sending me a sign from above. This kid is going to bring me happiness." "Are you 2 brothers? So you're going to be my uncle?" Bobby asked when he had finished all the desserts. He looked at Alex and Timmy carefully. "Do you 2 always go out together?" "No, we're not related," Timmy said. "Just happen to be." "By the way, Timmy," Alex said, "I have a handyman position opening up at the farm. Why don't you come work for me? I'll give you a place to live. Will the guest house suit you?" "Sure it will," Timmy exclaimed. "You won't regret hiring me, will you? I can do everything. I can build, I can plumb, and I can take care of the garden. And what kind of kebabs can I cook? You'll love it." "Then it's a deal," Alex smiled. "But you, Bobby, are coming to live with me." "Still asking, Alex?" Bobby rejoiced. "Can I call you that for now?" Alex nodded and found he wasn't even dizzy. His mood was at an all-time high. He certainly wouldn't be bored now. "Now that's dominant," Bobby exclaimed in admiration, cocking his head upward. "You could fit a whole school in here. and there's an arrow spinning on the roof. Look, Timmy. While the new tenants were getting acquainted with the house, Alex went to look for Jessica. There was no one in the greenhouse, and only the carriage stood lonely by the open window. Having gone around all the rooms, Alex found his assistant in the garden. She was lying in a hammock reading a book. Jessica, from this day on we will have new tenants. My son Bobby and the handyman Timmy now. You won't be bored either, but it'll be more fun at home too. What son? Jessica wondered. The future one, Alex smiled. I'm going to go make dinner, Jessica answered and smiled strangely. Alex noticed it, but thought he was imagining it. What luck to feed such a bunch of people and clean up after them, Jessica thought with annoyance. That wasn't the deal. You said the smell of that flour you brought back from Colombia would poison him quickly. Jessica was angry, speaking over the phone. The man in question was still alive, though he could barely move. For 10 whole months she had labored like a horse here. Whoever was on the other end of the line asked her to calm down. Jessica pulled herself together, smiled, and turned to go into the house. That's when she ran nose to nose with Bobby, who was looking at a bird in a tree. Maybe he'd heard everything. Are you playing spies? The boy asked with interest. What kind of spies? Jessica wondered. Well, you just said on the phone that you had to kill someone. I figured as much, Bobby replied simply. That's my business. What am I playing at? Jessica shouted. Weren't you eavesdropping? Curious Varvara turned around and walked away, leaving Bobby with his mouth open in surprise. The boy sincerely did not understand why he had offended this ant. Half an hour later, Timmy got under Jessica's hot hand and decided to tighten the faucet in the kitchen. My name is Timmy, he introduced himself as he entered. I fixed the faucet. Why didn't you call the plumber? There's plenty of work for him to do around here. It's lucky I'll be here now. So everything will be fine. There's a purple savior, Jessica snickered. Where'd you come up with that? Redheads. Why are you picking on Alex? Spongers? You watch your mouth. He took Timmy's hand in Arizona. You probably don't work for a day's labor either, so you can't talk like a human being. How come Alex keeps you here or don't talk to him? And Timmy left the kitchen. And then he refused to go to lunch, not wanting to eat food prepared by such unkind hands. The next day, Alexa decided to visit her family lawyer, as the case was too sensitive for a phone conversation. In the morning, though, he woke up again broken, and with a feeling of heaviness in his chest, forced himself to swallow a piece of toast and got into his car. At the law firm's office, his lawyer, trustee Nicholas Graham, was already waiting for him. Is something wrong? The elderly lawyer asked, helping Alex to a chair. Yes, the man said, barely breathing. Tell me, has my wife approached me about adopting Bobby? She did, Nicholas Graham answered, but she wanted to keep it a secret. That's why I didn't tell you, Alex, you see. As it turned out, Emily couldn't have children because of a fatal hereditary disease that was passed down the female line. Her grandmother and mother got over it, but Emily didn't. She didn't want to tell you so she wouldn't worry. And then she met this kid, a redhead like you found him. I couldn't find him, even though I looked for him. Yeah, he found himself, Alex said. But how come? Emily didn't say she was sick, and she didn't even look sick. I didn't want to bother you, the lawyer replied sadly. I mean, you've been so busy. The news would have knocked you out, but then I would have spent more time with her and wouldn't have argued over nothing. Alex grabbed his head. And even though Emily ... what's done is done, Nicholas Graham sighed. But now you'll have a son to pass your business on to. I've seen that boy. He's a good, funny kid, Alex answered quietly. His head was dizzy from such news. So this car accident had spared Emily the agony she was about to suffer. You could say that the lawyer shook his head. The disease was incurable. There was little chance of recovery. She realized it, but she held firm. The doctors gave her only 6 months. That's the way it was. Alex cried. The tears wouldn't stop. Nicholas Graham put his arm around his shoulders. They sat like that for a long time. Each of them remembered his own grief. When Alex returned home, he got an unpleasant surprise. There was swearing in the kitchen, during which Bobby's shrieking and Jessica's voice stood out the most. Alex was surprised that a nice, quiet house helper could be so shouting and rude. "Get out of here," Jessica shouted. "Don't be a housekeeper. You broke an egg, and now I have to mop the floor." "But you pushed me, didn't you?" Timmy justified himself. "You knocked the groceries out of my hands. I was going to fry myself some eggs." "I'm in charge. You can't have two masters in the kitchen," Jessica yelled. "You don't want to go through other people's fridges." "But Bobby asked you to give him something to eat, and you ignored him," Timmy said. "So I thought I'd feed him, and I need to eat before I work in the garden." Breakfast was at 8:00. That Bobby should have gotten less sleep, Jessica whispered. "The kid's on vacation." "He's getting enough sleep," Timmy stood up for the boy. "Why are you so angry anyway?" "It's none of your business who you are." When Alex entered the kitchen, all arguments stopped instantly. Timmy went outside and Jessica obligingly said, "Alex Peterson, are you hungry? Shall I cook something or serve a ready-made diet meal?" "No, thank you. Better feed the boys and I'll go get some rest. I've had too much going on today." "And can you please explain to me why you're fighting with Timmy? He steals food." "He doesn't pay for anything," Jessica started, but Alex interrupted her complaint. "He has a right to come in here and take whatever he wants. And so does Bobby. I told you yesterday, these are my new tenants. And Bobby's about to officially become my son. The lawyer's getting the paperwork drawn up." "Good," Jessica replied sullenly, frantically thinking about what to pack. "And that Timmy of yours has been hitting on me." "How?" Alex was surprised. "When did he do it?" "This morning," Jessica said resentfully. "He's so insolent. You have no idea." "All right, I'll talk to him," Alex promised. When he told her what the maid had told him, Timmy was speechless with indignation. He resented his master for believing Jessica. Bobby, for his part, stood up for his friend, telling him how Jessica had chased him out of the kitchen, called him bad names, and then attacked Timmy. Alex was caught between two fires and decided to watch for now. But Jessica still found a way to pull the blanket over him. One day, when only Timmy and Jessica were in the kitchen, she suddenly screamed like a wounded elephant and started tearing her clothes. Timmy thought she had spilled hot sauce on herself. He started to help her take off her apron, but she suddenly dug her nails into his face. The pain made him scream. A panting Alex Peterson came down screaming. The rush had taken a lot out of him, so he was breathing hard. "What happened?" Alex asked, looking around the kitchen. "He attacked me," Jessica exclaimed, crying crocodile tears. "He started tearing my clothes. I had to defend myself. If it hadn't been for you, he would have abused me." "What are you talking about?" Timmy screamed. "I didn't touch her. I thought you were a guy for ripping your sweatshirt." Alex just shook his head. He'd known Jessica longer than Timmy had. That's why he believed her. "You're going to have to leave," he said quietly to Timmy. Alex left the kitchen, and 5 minutes later Timmy was gone. Timmy was hurt that Jessica had been able to make him look like a monster, even though she was the wolf in sheep's clothing. "Where are you going to go?" Bobby asked. "I won't be lost, don't worry. See how it turned out," said Timmy. "And you, buddy, be careful and keep an eye on that Jessica. I don't like her. My heart tells me she's up to no good." "Okay," Bobby nodded and hugged him. Bobby took Timmy's words to heart. He followed Jessica like a shadow everywhere he went. One day, when Alex wasn't home, she put the plant in front of the open window again. While Jessica watered it, she talked quietly to it. "Grow, big poisonous one. Well done, flower. You're crushing your host little by little. You're also smart. You do damage selectively. You don't touch me. And thank you. Too bad your poisonous pollen doesn't work on that nasty boy." These words were clearly heard by Bobby, who was hiding behind a plant. He was thrown into a fever. He was both afraid and happy to know that Alex's illness was the fault of a plant that was easy to get rid of. When Jessica left the greenhouse, Bobby approached the dangerous plant. "So that's what you are, scarlet flower," Bobby said. He sniffed the round red flower. It smelled like dirty socks and something else nasty. Pinching his nose, he threw the pot with the plant out the window. There was the crunch of a broken vase. "You puppy," Jessica shouted. "Why did you throw away such an expensive gift? Take this, you filthy tramp." Jessica swung at the frightened boy, but her hand didn't have time to touch the child. Alex held her tightly and looked his maid straight in the eyes. "I will not allow children to be beaten," he said dryly. "But he's being naughty," Jessica started to justify herself. "That boy destroyed your wife's flower." "I remember all the flowers Emily used to buy." "Do you know why?" she asked. "Yes, she had such an innocent habit, and that stinking cactus you brought into the house. I didn't realize before why you were lying to me." "It's poisonous," Bobby shouted. "It stinks and it's poisoning you." "Uncle Alex, she told me when she was watering it. I heard her. So I threw it off the second floor." "That's a good boy," Alex said. Bobby shuddered and felt goosebumps run up and down his body. "Pack your things and leave," Alex said stiffly, turning to Jessica. She ran away frightened, but Bobby stayed behind. "Uncle Alex." "I think she set Uncle Timmy up," Tui said. "Definitely need to get him back." He slapped himself on the forehead. "But in the meantime, I need to find out something else." And Alex again asked his father's friend Nicholas Graham for help. He listened attentively and not without horror to his godson, and asked only one question. "When exactly did Jessica appear in your house?" 2 months after Emily's death. Literally the same day I told my partners I wanted to hire an assistant, Alex replied. "And what about Emily?" It was suspiciously quick, Nicholas Graham reflected. "My spouse has been looking for a domestic helper for at least a month, and then Alexa steps in. We need to think about it." Later that evening, Nicholas Graham called his mentee. "Can you believe this Jessica of yours turned out to be Buchanan's own sister? Remember him? But the one who was always dissatisfied with everything and made hasty bad decisions. Did you have to kick him off the board of directors? And he swore revenge on you then?" "He sure was," Alex marveled. "So he's the one behind the poisoning?" "Yes, Jessica brought that weird flower that's banned from Latin American homes. It poisons whoever is affected by its pollen contained on the long stamens, not these flowers." "Fascinating. It can. And you can't prove anything." "There was no poison in the blood tests, and the flower was already thrown away," Alex exclaimed. "How are you feeling now, Alex?" Nicholas Graham asked. "Great, like I've always been like this." "Didn't even notice," said Alex. "That's because you don't notice your health," explained the family friend. "As the years go by, you only notice its absence." We're in my 30s, and the men laughed heartily, shedding the weight of worry and pain. At lunch, Alex and Bobby ate what they could make themselves, along with bacon pizza and sweet rolls. "You stay for the host," Alex said in a businesslike tone. "Where are you going?" Bobby asked. "We gotta track down Timmy. I feel bad for them," sighed Alex. By evening, Bobby had made some dumplings he found in the freezer and was waiting for Alex. He was hungry, and even the unpleasant smell didn't deter his appetite. So he decided to eat alone for a while, reassuring himself that Alex was just late for work. But as the clock ticked past midnight, Bobby got scared. What if he stayed here alone? After sleeping through the night, the boy, convinced that the owner of the house was still gone, decided to go to the person who could help him, and so he went in search of Timmy. Timmy was where he had been before, but only a little tipsy, probably drinking out of resentment, sitting on a brand new bench by Emily's grave. When Timmy saw the boy, he got excited. "Oh, who's here? What are you doing here? Did Uncle Alex go looking for you yesterday? He didn't come here first thing." No, Timmy perked up. Did something happen? And then Bobby told what he knew, not leaving out the slightest detail. "What a bitch," Timmy exclaimed, sobering up in a flash, "and she made me look ugly too. I knew there was something wrong. I gotta go find Alex." "Let's go." The first thing they did was head to the police station and report a missing person. The officer on duty smelled the odor of booze. "Citizen," he said, "go and wake up. Maybe you drunkenly thought your imaginary friend had disappeared, or maybe you just have a white fever, so I can organize you to the sobering up center. Let's go." Timmy realized that this wasn't going to get him anywhere, so he decided to go another way. Where did Jessica live? He asked. They didn't know, but they knew in their gut that she had something to do with Alex's disappearance. What are we going to do now? Bobby was frustrated. I'm the only one who found the file, so he's missing too, he said. You've never called him that before. Timmy was surprised. What's changed? I miss him, Bobby said, his lips quivering. It's okay, we'll find your daddy, Timmy reassured the boy. They didn't go back to Alex's house, but stayed at the old lady's house, where Charlie had kindly let them stay. But they went to watch Alex's house as if they were on a job, hoping that they would catch the thread and unravel the whole tangle of strange happenings, and the next night they were lucky. Jessica was on the doorstep of the house, and she opened the door with her own key without hiding from the neighbors, who thought it was just a maid coming to clean the house. Bobby was tempted to yell something hurtful at her, but Timmy explained that they were spies and were following a criminal. Bobby liked the game. Half an hour later, the former maid left the house holding a small suitcase. Then she got into a car and drove off somewhere. When Timmy and Bobby entered the house, they noticed that the safe was open and there was no money in it. Jessica simply robbed Alex by peeking at the lock code. Obviously, Bobby and Timmy would not have had time to catch up with her, and Jessica would have noticed that she was being followed. So Timmy asked a friend of his to run the license plate number. In a few minutes, the boys knew Jessica's address and calmly drove to her house. They went around the back of the building and heard muffled conversation. Was someone arguing in the basement? Let me go or it's going to get worse. You'll answer to the law for everything. Alex's voice was heard. And you on the jury laughed at first, Jessica said. Didn't I tell you I have another trump card up my sleeve? And this time I'll use it and win your head. What's not to like? I liked cleaning up after you. Alex could hear himself getting sick. But that's it, Timmy said. It's time to call the police. Now we have all the evidence. A SWAT team arrived and rescued Alex, who was already unconscious, and an ambulance crew snatched the resting man from death's grasp. Alex's lawyer quickly found all the loose ends and made sure Jessica, along with her brother, ended up in the dock. They got decent sentences. The case was closed, but none of this pleased Bobby and Timmy, who were on duty at Alex's bedside day and night. What are we going to do? Timmy asked. Would he live? If he gets a blood transfusion, he'll make it, said the attending physician. But we don't have that rare group right now, he said. Would mine work? Timmy asked. I was told in the army that I have a rare blood type. I don't know what military unit I served in. I lost my military ID a long time ago. But then the doctor said, to the treatment room, and he hurried after the nurse. Timmy's blood was a match, and what's more, it was identical. Would you like to do a DNA test for compatibility? The doctor asked. I have a vague suspicion that you and Alexa Chandler are close relatives. Timmy agreed, remembering how Bobby had once referred to him and Alex as brothers, as if they came from an orphanage. There was a great desire to find any of the relatives. While Timmy was working, Alexa's DNA results came back. What do you mean, a sibling? Alex's mouth dropped open in surprise. How could that be possible? Nicholas Graham had to unravel the tangle of unusual events. Timmy came in the evening and went straight to Alex's room. How are you? How are you feeling? You've had a lot of my blood, so don't be surprised if you feel like riding a motorcycle, Timmy laughed. Thanks, brother, Alex said quietly, tears in his eyes. What did you say? Timmy was surprised. Are we really blood brothers? They hugged each other, not believing their happiness. The loneliness was over. Now they had someone to talk to about their day, and to be sure they would be understood and supported. Everyone needs a family, and Bobby stood there happy for them, wishing he could be welcomed into the family too. Come here, buddy. Alex held out his hand, and Bobby ran up and hugged both brothers. May I interrupt your idyll? Came the cheerful voice of Nicholas Graham. There's news. First, Bobby is now officially a Chandler. Secondly, you were both born to a student who abandoned you because she couldn't feed you. Her trail is being lost overseas. But here's the weird thing. You were separated as infants. Alexa was adopted by a wealthy couple. The director of the orphanage wanted Timmy, so she hid the fact that Alex had a twin brother. But the director died of a heart attack shortly before the adoption, and Timmy stayed at the orphanage, Alex explained. It was no big deal. We're together now, everyone in the room shouted happily. Quiet, or I won't be able to sleep. A pretty girl on crutches entered the room. Excuse me, Timmy said, and deftly took flowers out of the vase. These are for you, beautiful princess. The girl smiled. More like Baba Yaga, since I'm limping. My name is Marina. Timmy escorted Alex's neighbor to her room. Look, sister, we got flowers, Marina exclaimed. Wow, orchids, I love them, said her exact copy. So you are also twins, Timmy asked. What do you mean two? Marina was surprised. Alex and I found out today that we are twin brothers, Timmy explained excitedly. Can you imagine? Wow, exclaimed Sonia. By the way, who is the other brother? Let's go to our room. We have a lot of interesting things to tell you, Timmy suggested. The girls gladly agreed. When Alex saw Sonia with orchids in her hair, his heart sank. She was beautiful. Maybe this is all for a reason. Maybe Katie is giving me a sign that it's time to stop mourning her and start moving on with my life, Alex thought. Strange, but this girl likes orchids too. My name is Alex, he introduced himself to Sonia. My name is Anna, she answered and blushed. She definitely liked this young man with sadness in his eyes. And when she learned the complicated story of his life, she fell in love completely. So after she was discharged from the hospital, the two couples formed. Timmy walked under the arm with Marina, and Alex with Sonia. Between them and holding everyone's hands, walked Bobby, thanks to whom this tangled story came to a happy conclusion. 3 months later, the Chandlers had a double wedding, to which Charlie was invited, of course. Seeing the happy faces brought tears to his eyes. He was happy for Alex and Timmy, who were finally out of the black. Congratulations, Dad, Bobby said in Alex's ear, and hugged his father.
Helga and Andrew were together for almost 3 years. The woman believed that marriage was almost a settled issue, because at first her beloved constantly said that in just a little while they would have free funds for a luxurious celebration. Embarrassed, Helga tried to explain that she didn't need any big celebrations. But the man, hugging her tightly, convinced everything should be perfect for my beloved girl. The best restaurant, a luxurious dress, a stunning photo shoot so that years later we can show the wedding album to our children with such speeches. Helga completely lost the ability to argue with her beloved and patiently waited for Andrew to finally decide that the accumulated funds would be enough for all his ideas. The woman sometimes felt that her partner was fooling her, but he skillfully supported her faith in a happy future. And in the end, she even defended him in front of her relatives. My mother, who moved many years ago following her new husband to the other side of the country, constantly received Helga in phone conversations and correspondence in instant messengers. Daughter, take off your rose-colored glasses. Since your Andrew says he loves you but still doesn't want to get married, run away from him. He just settled down comfortably, living on everything he had ready, and you don't even have the right to vote to defend a modest wedding, as you want. Brother Denny prudently did not meddle in his sister's affairs. But his wife, Lily, completely agreed with her mother-in-law and convinced Helga, honestly, it's a pity to watch how you waste your life. Yes, it was enough for me to see how this Andrew treats you once to understand that nothing worthwhile will come of you. Besides, as far as I managed to catch, his relatives are not at all happy with you. Do you remember how many times he took you to visit your parents? Helga, in love, tried to protect Andrew. Lily continued to persuade, citing, as it seemed to her, an ironclad argument. If they greeted you normally, you would happily go to them. To this, Helga had nothing to say. On Andrew's side, her relatives were not at all delighted with her, and the young woman was even disgusted to remember how the face of her beloved mother grimaced when she named her profession. Helen, Andrew's sister, did not remain silent and loudly asked, "So do you do a manicure?" "That's cool. I file and paint my nails all day long." "Granny, can you hear?" She shouted towards the kitchen. "Andrew will now always go with a manicure and pedicure, and we'll probably get it too. Helga was not shy about her work, but she was very uncomfortable. In addition, Andrew, after sitting at the table for a while, explained that he needed to make an important call and went out onto the landing. The man returned when his mother was already putting the cake on the table, and Helga was exhausted by Helen's questions and malicious jokes. She was ready to howl. She wanted to send the whole company and the women looking condescendingly at her to hell. And had the beloved stayed even a few more minutes, most likely the guest would not have been able to stand it, and told the hostesses everything she thought about their snobbery. As if to atone for his escape from the holiday dinner on the way home, Andrew was especially courteous to Helga. In general, the woman in love decided that she would not overreact to the unkind reception given to her and enjoyed the company of her loved one. A year has passed since Helga moved in with Andrew. The second year flew by, the third year was coming to an end, and no changes in social status were foreseen. Moreover, Helga began to guess that her beloved had ceased to be faithful to her. Outwardly, everything was almost the same as before, but small details gave Andrew away completely. At first, he stopped picking her up after finishing work. He made an excuse by saying that he had to stay late because of a large order. And she believed and felt sorry for the unfortunate man who has to do everything for himself and for others. He eagerly flew away with everything that was prepared for his arrival and completely stopped inviting her somewhere to unwind, as was their custom so recently. Now, after dinner, Andrew lay down on the sofa or sat near the game console to complete the next level. Helga tried to initiate joint entertainment, but it seemed that nothing could move Andrew from his favorite places at home. "Baby, I'm so exhausted," the man explained. "Give me at least a little rest. You're smart, and you understand perfectly how tired I am." Helga quietly stepped aside and went to clean, do laundry, or do some other work. Recently, it has become painful for her that upon returning home from work, Andrew was not eager as usual to hug her, but first hurried to the shower. Helga tried not to force things and not to strain the relationship, fearing that scandals would lead to a breakup. The only act that the woman did against the will of her beloved was that in the second year of living together she brought a small puppy into the apartment, at a quick glance at which it was obvious that there were many breeds among its ancestors. Can you imagine? Someone threw it in a tied bag in the trash. I threw out the trash. I hear some rustling. I thought that the rats were completely insolent and weren't afraid of anyone. And then I realized that someone inside the bag took it out, untied it, and there. Helga looked helplessly at her loved one, who was wincing from the story told to him as if from an attack of toothache, and spoke categorically. "I have nothing against animals, but you'd better take this flea-beard one to where you found it. He's scary, like some kind of hobbit." Helga objected. "He's not scary. Very charming, too. The paws are so furry. Listen, let's call him Frodo." The woman gave a lot of arguments. And finally, although without much enthusiasm, Andrew agreed. The puppy remained in the apartment and grew up to the delight of Olia. She considered him her best friend, and partly caring for the baby distracted her from thoughts that it was time to give birth to a child. However, before this important event, Helga hoped to one day hear a marriage proposal. She had particular hopes for a joint vacation, which they had planned almost 6 months in advance. But suddenly Andrew changed his mind and explained. "Listen, take someone for your company and go on vacation without me. At work, the project won't be completed without me. We'll relax with you sometime later." Out of solidarity, Helga also did not go to warmer climes. Besides, she didn't want to burden Andrew with caring for Frodo. She took up household chores that everyone had never gotten around to before, tried to make the apartment cozy, and even did some minor cosmetic repairs on her own. Moreover, Andrew has long reproached the woman for the fact that the puppy she picked up caused a lot of destruction to the apartment. "This dog of yours does not bring any benefit, only losses from it. The door was scratched. Give her to a shelter. They will try to place her in a family. And if you really want to, you can play around with sponsoring this establishment a little." However, if in some ways Helga was ready to endlessly adapt to her loved one, then in the matter of the dog's place of residence she was adamant. "Frodo didn't do anything too terrible, and I won't take him to any shelter." The dog was a faithful companion in all walks, which Andrew increasingly refused to do. Helga sometimes felt that their relationship no longer resembled love at all, but represented a format of communication between the master of the house and the servants. The woman tried to find an excuse for her partner, but the end of the affair was very unexpected. About an hour after Andrew left on a business trip, the apartment door suddenly swung open, and Helga, thinking that the man had forgotten something, jumped out into the hallway in a t-shirt and short shorts and saw her beloved sister. Frodo, not too angrily, but carefully bared his teeth at the illegal guest, who brazenly opened the apartment with a spare key, and she rudely declared, taking pepper spray out of her pocket, "Come on, put the dog somewhere in the toilet, otherwise she won't find it enough. And let's go talk." Such an aggressive start to Andrew's sister's visit came as a complete surprise to Helga. However, she did not argue, and hiding the dog, invited her to go into the room. "In general, we need to talk seriously," the guest announced. "Mom chose an excellent match for Andrew. Profitable, unlike you. The family he ends up with will greatly help his career. And with you, he is only wasting time. So it will work for pennies. He himself does not dare to tell you about it, but he and a suitable bride have already submitted an application. There will be a wedding soon. Only he feels sorry for you, you see, and has no idea how to break this news. And there is no reason for me to start a ceremony with you. So come on, pack your things and clear the area. Leave the apartment. And don't think that you can bear everything that doesn't belong to you. I'll be watching you. Otherwise, you never know. You decide to steal something." Helga recovered from the absurdity of everything that was happening quite quickly, because she simply could not believe Helen's words and tried to shield the groom. "What nonsense. I saw Andrew off an hour ago, and he said goodbye to me very warmly." "Do not believe. You're right. If you want, call him and ask him directly." Helga listened to the advice and told Andrew in a few words about his sister's visit and clarified. "Is it true that you are planning to marry another woman? Do I need to pack my things now," as Helen put it. The not too confident voice on the phone was the first blow for Helga. The woman sat down on a chair and heard something that instantly broke her heart. "Helga, you are very good. You are the best woman in my life. But circumstances have developed so that we need to separate." Under the malicious gaze of Helen, who didn't even think about leaving the room, Helga tried not to cry, but it was impossible to hold back the tears, and she almost shouted, "Why didn't you tell me everything personally?" Andrew, who managed to collect his thoughts after the initial confusion, stopped being embarrassed and answered cheerfully, "Sorry. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the breakup several times, but somehow I didn't want to offend you. Understand, I'm also a living person, and it's not easy for me to erase everything that happened between us." The man said something else, but Helga, putting the phone on the table, stopped listening to him. Each of his phrases felt like a dull pain in his chest, and he wanted to hide from Helen's mocking gaze. The woman, acting as if under hypnosis, began to pack her things, bitterly reflecting on the fact that the rolling suitcase she had bought for the trip had come in handy. Only now it's not a foreign voyage planned, but a move, essentially to nowhere. Helga stopped abruptly. And where did the moral strength come from? "Look, I don't even have anywhere to go right now. Because with a dog, it's unlikely that I'll be able to quickly find rented housing. Give me a few days, please. I'll find an apartment where the owners will let us in, and I'll take Frodo right away. Give me at least 2 days. By the time Andrew returns, I and the dog will have already left here." However, Helen was determined. "Never. You never know how you will behave. And then how can I justify myself to my brother? Come on, get ready, and don't forget your dog. Listen, why are you pretending to be a naive fool, and even trying to push for pity? You probably know that my brother has always been against animals in the apartment. Only you are a benefactor. True, at someone else's expense. From what I hear, your dog is scratching the bathroom door. Andrew is right. There are only losses from you and this flea. On a good note, we should take money from you for repairs. But I'm not petty. So fold your laundry and clothes and go ahead, sorry, goodbye." Helga became disgusted from her own gullibility and some kind of emotional blindness. She felt deep down that Andrew had not been completely honest with her lately, but she still tried not to notice any warning bells. So I waited. The bells turned into an alarm bell from Helen's shrill voice and real betrayal from Andrew. She somehow threw things, which turned out to be not so much, into the suitcase, put an almost new down jacket into a bulky shopping bag, and picked up a bag with the remains of food for Frodo in the kitchen. She acted mechanically. She opened the bathroom, put a leash on the dog, leaving the muzzle dangling around her neck, and left the apartment where she spent almost 3 years of her life. Frodo carried a bag of food in his teeth, walking sedately, and was nearby, occasionally distracting himself to mark trees that were especially interesting to him. And Helga had no idea where they were going. Both her mother and her brother's wife warned her that Andrew was too keen on getting married, but she didn't want to hear the reasonable arguments of her relatives. The beloved constantly somehow explained the impossibility of getting married in the near future. And now, Please's sister humiliatingly kicked the girl out of the apartment. Helga understood that she was left with nothing. It was possible to try to compensate for the amount of repairs made in Andrew's apartment with her money, because he bought himself a foreign car for the occasion, but the woman did not have the slightest desire to meet with this man and members of his family anymore. Outbred Frodo as a dog that she herself fed and raised. That's all the memory of the relationship. Besides, if she had listened to Andrew, she wouldn't have had a pet. Mom has long been building her happiness on the other side of the country, and going to her, of course, is not an option at all. Only Denny remains. Helga happily found a phone in the pocket of her shorts, in which she left her ex-lover's apartment, and called her brother. Without going into details, the woman asked, "Hello, can I stay with Frodo today?" The brother, sensing something was wrong in his younger sister's voice, immediately agreed and suggested, "Where are you now?" "I'm somewhere in your area on business. Maybe I should grab you and the dog?" Helga happily accepted her brother's offer and named the cafe where she often met with Lilia and her nephews as a landmark. Andrew categorically did not want her relatives to visit his apartment, and now the woman clearly saw in this behavior the frivolity of her former roommate's intentions. The daughter-in-law did not have to wait long. In the back seat of the family car and child car seats were nephews, the eldest, 7-year-old Max, and the youngest, 1-year-old George, who joyfully waved their hands to their beloved aunt and dog. Lily immediately understood from the tear-stained eyes of her husband's sister what had happened, and opening the trunk to help put a few belongings there, Helga casually remarked, "I won't even remind you that I warned you about the vile nature of your Andrew. I'll just say I'm very glad that you woke up. It was high time to end this relationship. Rejoice in your freedom, and do not be sad for someone who is not worthy of you. He's not worth your little finger." A drone and a weakling. Helga sat in the front seat. Frodo managed to sit at the feet of his hostess, very compactly for his size, and soon the whole company was already accommodated in the small apartment of Denny and Lily. Helga understood that in a family with 2 children growing up, she and her dog would greatly displace the owners, and she started calling colleagues from the salon where she worked. However, no one had relatives or acquaintances who could rent out the corner for an acceptable price. Anne's boss, however, offered an option, but the owner of the apartment asked for such a high rental price that, if she agreed to it, she simply would not have anything to live on. Max fussed with Frodo, showing his younger brother how joyfully the dog alternately gave paws, as if playing. And the 2 women watching this sweet picture smiled synchronously. Helga shrugged guiltily. "Sorry, Lily, but it looks like you won't be able to find an apartment quickly." Not even a shadow of irritation or dissatisfaction flashed on Lily's face. On the contrary, she suggested, as if making excuses, "Helga, if you don't mind, let's put you and Frodo on the balcony for now. It's warm now, and there's already a cot there. I myself enjoy watching the city there in the evenings. It will probably be a little inconvenient, but there is generally not enough space in the kitchen. There was a table with a refrigerator. They could barely fit it in. It's a pity that we haven't had time to expand our living conditions yet, but now there will be an incentive to move more actively. Then there will be enough space for everyone." Denny, who came home from work in the evening, suggested that his sister talk to Andrew like a man, but Helga flatly refused. "No, don't. You'll find more problems on your own. Let him live as he wants." Albeit cramped, but not offended, Helga spent the night in her brother's apartment, although she understood that the option of walking from the balcony through the master's bedroom to take the dog for a walk in the morning was not at all convenient. After breakfast, Lily suddenly turned to Olya with a strange question. "Actually, what keeps you in this area? You can find a job anywhere in the city." Helga shrugged. "The owner, Alice, has a chain of salons. She sometimes allows us to change locations due to relocation or when there is a vacancy." The daughter-in-law almost clapped her hands. "Look, I think I know what to do. My aunt left me with a house on the outskirts of the city, with all the amenities, by the way. Of course, no one has lived there since the winter, and a general cleaning will probably be required, but this is the normal way out of the situation. You ask your boss if she has a salon in that area and if there is free space in it. And I think everything will just work out wonderfully. Fresh air. The dog, again, is free. We will visit you. It will be really cool in the summer. I can even move there with the boys. Denny strongly supported his wife's idea. Lily, but you're right. Really, how did this not occur to me? Helga doubted that the boss would meet her halfway, but the idea was indeed a good one. The woman decided that she was not risking anything, even if Alice could not transfer her to another salon. You can at least try to live in Lee's house, find money, and go to work. Even if you have to leave early, the issue of housing will be resolved. And now for Helga and her pet, this was the most important thing. The conversation with Alice did not bring any positive results. However, the owner of the salon chain promised, "Helga, you are in good standing with me. So as soon as I think about opening a point in that area, I already know who I'll invite to work there. But for now I need you here. I think there is no reason for you to leave me, since getting a new job is always problematic. You understand that I do not accept lateness. So please plan your route to work so as not to keep our visitors waiting." Fine. Olia had no choice but to agree. As a result, the woman's spring and summer were filled with numerous worries, which were mainly associated with the need to travel almost an hour one way from her temporary shelter to her place of work. It's good that thanks to Lily's friendliness and sincerity, Helga did not feel awkward. On the contrary, when the daughter-in-law and her sons, as promised, came to live in a private house, the woman became much happier. Frodo, who attracted boys like a magnet, was also not bored while his mistress was away. Denny and Lily were finally able to get a larger apartment with the help of government payments, and Helga happily tried to repay their relatives for their kind attitude. The woman, when she could, worked with her nephews, and also participated in the renovation process. Maybe it wasn't always easy to manage the active Max and Alex, who had just recently learned to walk and was diligently looking for a way to give himself a bruise, but there was finally no time to think about the unpleasant separation. Lily introduced Helga to neighbors whom she had known since her childhood, and she had a good relationship with almost everyone. As a result, the abandoned woman even gained a small clientele. Even though the part-time work was not too significant and was sometimes even expressed in natural products, it increased Helga's self-esteem. However, she did not always try to bend to what her neighbors told her when they came for manicures. The woman cared little about the opinions of those around her, who, seeing how the dog lived calmly in the house, Frodo was given a personal chair, and he, having a not at all evil disposition, limited himself to attentive observation of everything that was happening around him, said Ook. "Keep the dog in the house." The neighbor on the left, Jane, was indignant when she came in to get her nails in order. "Look, there's a booth in the yard. Put it on a chain, and that's it. It'll be more useful. Why are you feeding him in vain?" Helga was not offended by such talk. Frodo was her true friend, and it was useless to convince a fully grown lady of anything. In addition, the dog turned out to be an excellent companion for the boys, which means that it was necessary to take special care of its cleanliness, and all advice to place the dog on the street was completely ignored. Thanks to the increasing flow of acquaintances who decided to get a manicure from her, the abandoned woman realized that her skills were in demand, and she, especially given the support of her relatives, would not be lost. Helga tried not to remember or think about Andrew. She even began to succeed. Denny was happy for his sister, who now looked much better than on the day when, with eyes reddened from tears, she appeared on the threshold of his old family nest. Lily was also happy that the girl had finally learned to smile again. Closer to autumn, Lily and her children returned to a new apartment, where quite pleasant renovations had already been made. It was time for the eldest nephew to get ready for school and explore a new territory, the desk, where he had to learn his lessons. Lily asked straightforwardly, "What, Helga, are you staying, or will you move with us? Now there is enough space for everyone, and it will be closer to work. It's a shame to spend so much time on the road." Max intervened in the conversation between the adults and said, "There will definitely be enough for everyone, and you will help me with my homework, it's true." However, Helga refused the proposal from her relatives. "If possible, I will stay here. I really liked it here. And Frodo is better here." Denny, without insisting, still told his sister, "If you get bored or sad, just let us know. We will pick you and Frodo up immediately." Agreed? Helga hugged her family one by one and promised, "If anything happens, I'll definitely tell you." Thank you. Whenever possible, Helga came to visit her brother when her help was needed, but she always finally refused the offer to move into an apartment, saying that she and the dog were much calmer in nature. The woman did not yet suspect that soon the calm period of her life would come to an unexpected end. Cold and autumn flashed by. And then, obeying the eternal law of nature, bright white snow fell to the ground and everything became gloomy. The frost has already firmly grabbed all the puddles and turned the off-road conditions on the roadway into miniature mountain ranges. Helga now had to wake up even earlier to get to work on time. But the slightly shifted regime did not bother her much. Life on the outskirts of the city seemed to come to a standstill as darkness fell. Sometimes, of course, there were noisy cars whizzing by and dogs doing roll call, but overall the area was quiet and calm. Helga liked everything here, and her pet clearly enjoyed this lifestyle. One night, Frodo suddenly began to behave strangely. He worriedly, which was something exceptional for him, touched the mistress's hand with his cold, wet nose, sliding his claws along the floor, running from the door to Helga's bed. Without waiting for dawn, the owner could not stand it and decided to take the pet out for a walk. The woman became worried what if the dog ate some kind of poison. So, we need to see how the dog behaves on the street. And sighing, Helga quickly pulled on her sweatpants and put her feet in her sneakers. Putting on her jacket, she thought that it was time to prepare winter shoes. There was hardly anything comfortable in the local store. This means that after work, you need to walk around the city's shopping centers and look for new clothes. In addition, it would be a good idea to visit construction stores and consider the option of insulating the veranda. If you approach the matter wisely, then you will get a good winter refrigerator. And in warmer seasons, the veranda can become an additional room. Of course, this idea had to be discussed with Lilia and her brother, but first we needed to at least roughly estimate how much it would cost to implement the bold idea. The dog stomped fussily at the threshold, distracting him from his thoughts, and Helga hurried to open the door. The miracle never happened. The snow never fell. The sky was overcast and quite dark. In the bright light of the lantern, the familiar courtyard looked unusual, and even somehow mysterious. Frodo immediately rushed to the apple tree that grew near the gate, and began to bark, and then whine softly. Approaching, Helga saw a package lying under a tree. It only took a split second to understand that someone had thrown a small child into the yard. The woman grabbed the bundle and hurried into the saving warmth of the house, mentally reproaching herself for not immediately taking the dog outside, which clearly sensed the foundling. In the room, Helga, who had gained experience in handling small children by helping her daughter-in-law care for Denny, unwrapped the blanket and realized that it was time to change the swaddle for the girl lying in front of her. It was very fortunate that Lily left some of her son's things in the house. Therefore, there were no problems getting the little one in order. But what to do now with such a find? Helga shook the blanket to hang it on the radiator, and a note printed on the printer suddenly fell out of the lining. "I'm scared to leave my daughter to the mercy of fate, but there is no other option. Believe me, I have a compelling, almost justifiable reason for doing what I do. Take care of my girl. Heaven bless my little one and you." Helga felt uneasy. It was all very strange. It seemed that the words were sincere, but this in no way connected in the woman's mind with the cruelty of the act. It turns out that the person who dropped the child off deliberately took a risk for the baby's health by leaving her on the street rather than dropping her off in some warmer place. What if Frodo had not asked to leave? Or if she hadn't released it? Lilia became scared. But it was necessary to act, and urgently, even if it was night outside. The woman wanted to warm the milk, but was afraid that the child might have an allergy, so she decided to call an ambulance, doctors, and the police. The dispatcher, we must give her credit, sent a team very quickly. The doctors examined the baby and shook their heads when they heard Helga's confused explanations that she had found the child and did not know what to do with him. The paramedic, a middle-aged woman, advised, "We, of course, can now take the baby to a children's hospital, but, to be honest, there are no special indications for this. The girl is about 6 to 7 months old, judging by her development and external condition. She lived in good conditions. She was clearly well looked after, and being in the frosty air did not have time to harm her. Your dog seemed to sense something was wrong almost immediately, and the girl didn't even get hypothermic, fortunately. If possible, wait for the police. Actually, I have no right to say this, but the later the child ends up in a government institution, the better, in my opinion, it will be. You can give your baby warm water from a spoon. If you have zucchini, cook it and puree it. Try to give a treat if suddenly the child begins to cough, sneeze, or any other symptoms appear. Do not engage in amateur activities and call the team. You never know what we missed during the inspection. All clear? Helga nodded her head, thinking that it looked like she would have to take time off from work today to wait for the police, because bothering Lily and asking her to come was not an option. Not only does the daughter-in-law have to take Max to school in the morning, but she also has to drag Denny across the city. Having seen off the ambulance crew, Helga, under the attentive gaze of the dog, took the girl he had found in her arms and began to rock her. Once upon a time, a woman really wanted to give birth to a child for her beloved Andrew, but the implementation of the idea somehow kept getting postponed. Only now suddenly there was such a wave of tenderness towards a defenseless creature. However, the thought of keeping the child did not arise. As soon as the morning came into its own, the woman warned Alice that she would not be able to come to work, and after listening to the boss's grumbling, for the first time she seriously thought about leaving the salon. The policeman came when the clock was already approaching noon, and immediately began asking Helga about all the circumstances of the case. The woman openly explained that she discovered the child in time only thanks to Frodo. It's good that he raised me. The baby could have frozen if it weren't for him. Doctors said she was completely healthy and was receiving good care. Fyodor, having studied the note, put it in a bag, patted the smart dog on his wide head, and then clarified. Well, if the doctors said that everything is fine, then I'm sending your find to the baby home. Swallowing the lump that suddenly appeared in her throat, Helga answered in monosyllables. Yes. Deep down in her heart, she felt sorry for the girl. But the woman believed that at that moment she was doing the only right thing. Soon after the formalities were settled, representatives of the relevant police department appeared at the house, and the district police officer briefly explained to them what had happened. The found baby was taken away, thanking Helga for her concern, and the woman finally relaxed. Having treated Frodo to meat, she began to clean up the house, although it was not dirty. I just wanted to do something, and not sit, immersed in sad thoughts about the fate of the girl. However, it didn't take long to clean up. Jane came to visit, who, as it turned out a little later, was a good friend of Fedor's wife, and was already privy to the details of everything that happened at night and in the morning. The neighbor began to lament. Yesterday I spent the night with my daughter. And here on our street I missed such an event. As a friend told me that a foundling had been found, my heart almost stopped. What kind of mother could do such a thing, cuckoo? There are no other words. It's necessary to leave a child in the cold. Ugh. The woman, having spoken, reached into her bag, took out a package, and handed it to the surprised Helga, explaining, I collected this for your hero. Looking at him, I scolded him and called him a parasite. And it turns out he saved the child. After sitting a little longer and discussing the details of the unusual incident several times, Jane got ready to go home, saying, Now the times have come. It seems like everything is in bulk, and the children are thrown away like some kind of garbage. Being in an orphanage is like a punishment without guilt. No matter what anyone says, life there is not easy. I know it from myself. The woman fell silent and, brushing away uninvited tears, said goodbye to Helga and left. Frodo looked with an understanding look, as if he was looking into the depths of his owner's soul, and she admitted to the dog. Imagine, I think I would like the girl you found to stay with us. Why, you get along great with children. And I'm already at such an age that it's high time to become a mother. You and I worked out our practice on children excellently, in my opinion. So they could definitely handle one girl. By chance, or perhaps truly understanding the mistress, Frodo winked, and the touched woman hugged her faithful dog. During an evening conversation, Helga told her daughter-in-law about the girl she had found and asked, You seem to have mentioned once that one of your classmates is raising a foster child. Maybe you happen to know how the adoption procedure goes? Lily, it turned out, was not too surprised by the question and promised to find out all the important nuances. The next day, Helga came to work and tried to act as if nothing unusual had happened the day before. However, my thoughts stubbornly returned to the found baby and everything connected with her. Helga did not understand what reason could be good enough to abandon a child on the street in the cold. And she was so immersed in her thoughts that, while working on the nails of one of the regular visitors, she incorrectly answered the questions asked and almost ruined the drawing. As luck would have it, The owner was in the salon that day, who noted the insecure work of the master and, after the client left, invited Helga to a conversation in her small office. "What kind of nonsense have you allowed yourself to eat? Yesterday I didn't go out at all, but today it's like you're holding instruments in your hands for the first time. I understand everything. There may be personal problems. We're all human. But when troubles begin to affect the quality of work, this is unacceptable. Nowadays, there is such competition among nail service professionals that there is simply no right to make mistakes and send visitors away not completely satisfied. So Helga, I want to get an honest answer from you to a direct question. Will you be able to cope with your emotions and work normally? Or should I look for another master at the salon?" Helga had to briefly brief her boss on what had happened, and she unexpectedly softened her tone. "Oh, well, I would have explained it right away. Helping a child is sacred. I thought it was a sin that you were walking. She doesn't seem like a frivolous person, but you never know what happens in life. But still, Helga, pull yourself together. You did everything you could, and you have nothing to reproach yourself with." Unexpectedly, Helga opened up. "You know, I gave the girl to the specialists, it seems, but my heart is restless. I feel some kind of responsibility or something." The insightful Alice clarified. "Aren't you going to adopt her? Keep in mind, this is not taking a dog or a kitten into the house. The hassle is many times greater. True, the return is incomparable, but you need to think about everything extremely seriously. I'll tell you in advance, so that there is no misunderstanding between us. I won't put you on maternity leave. You understand, this is not my practice. But at home, as far as I understand, things are slowly going well for you. Yes, I'll be sorry to part with you, but I won't keep my place for you. No offense, of course. There is constant turnover in salons. There is no escape from it. So maybe it will be possible to find a job for you with a break, but I won't make any promises. In general, your decision should be fully informed." There was a knock on the boss's office. Administrator Lena came in and apologized and said, "Alice." There, the visitor arrived a little earlier than she had been booked in, and behaved rather nervously. I offered her coffee, but she insists that she get a manicure as soon as possible, as if she expected us to lay out the red carpet for her and greet her with applause. But suddenly they offered her food. Alice, dissatisfied and gloomily, besieged the administrator. "Keep your thoughts about visitors to yourself, it will be better." Turning her head to Helga, the boss summed up the conversation. "I think you understood what I said. Then go and work." Helga hurried to her workplace and got down to business that brought her both money and pleasure. She appreciated Alice's frankness, which gave a complete picture of the prospects in connection with the likely changes, and decided to really think through her idea of adopting the found girl in every detail. In the evening, Helga's brother's family came to visit Helga and her faithful Frodo. The joyful boys were busy with the dog, who was happy about the return of the children, whom he considered his charges, and tolerated all signs of attention from them. At this time, the adults were discussing the details of the incident. Denny, looking straight into his sister's eyes, asked, "Helga, as I understand it, you regret that the girl ended up in a state-owned house and would like to adopt her. You've always had a kind heart, but don't you think this is too much? You, of course, have experience communicating with Max and Alex. But that doesn't mean anything. Who knows what problems the baby will have?" Lily echoed her husband and provided valuable information. Adoption is not a simple procedure at all. The documents required are through the roof. When my friend read out the list, my hair stood on end. I briefly outlined the situation and realized that it was not in vain. A friend who passed through the bureaucratic cordon immediately explained that you have at least 3 complicating circumstances at once. First of all, you are not married. And although according to the law this is not a basis for refusing adoption, in reality it may be considered that this is not in favor of the child. Secondly, you want to adopt a specific girl. In general, it turns out that there is a waiting list for small, healthy children. It may well turn out that by the time you collect all the necessary information, the girl will already be in the family. Thirdly, although in fact this is the most important, you don't have the necessary space of your own, George, and the share in our apartment will most likely not be enough. Noticing that Helga was sad, Lily rushed to support her. If you are firmly ready to fight for the girl, then Denny and I consulted and decided that I could issue you a deed of gift for this house. Seeing that his sister was about to burst into tears with emotion, Denny hastened to defuse the situation. However, as an option, you can urgently find a groom without material and housing problems and quickly get married. So 2 out of 2 problems will be solved with one graceful act, at least formalizing the fake marriage. Helga smiled through her tears. Well, this is some kind of fantastic option. It seems to me that it is absurd to count on him. Lily agreed. It's easier to become the mistress of this house anyway. I would never dare to give it into the wrong hands, and so he will actually remain in the family. I think my aunt would be happy. Having officially received a complete list of documents required for adoption, Helga began to obtain all the necessary certificates. She learned the wisdom at the school of foster parents, ran to doctors to pass a medical examination, visited various offices, and took a reference from her boss and a certificate of income. In addition, at the prompting of Lily and a friend, Helga asked the policeman to write a petition with a brief history of the discovery of the child, and Fedor did not refuse. In addition, thanks to a good relationship with the wife of the district police officer, he, in some unknown way, contributed to the fact that Helga was allowed to visit the found girl in the baby's home. Communication with the baby, who was named Diane, became a real miracle for the woman. She held the girl in her arms and was touched. Emotions were reflected on the small face. Even when Diane frowned or began to grunt with displeasure, Helga admired the baby. The nannies were accustomed to visits from the woman, who brought things not only for her pet, but also for other children, and sometimes they allowed her to stay with the girl longer. Although many employees have experienced some burnout over the many years of work at the baby house, they could not help but be happy that Diane, it seems, will soon find her mother. Every time Helga met a neighbor on the street, she sincerely thanked her for her help and support and offered to give her, her daughter, and her granddaughter a free manicure. Jane, they waved it off. Come on, Helga. How can I stay on the sidelines when there is practically a struggle for a child right next to me? I cannot. Let the girl have a chance to quickly become your daughter. No one deserves to end up in an orphanage, and I will help in any way I can. Thank God I have lived in the world and understand people. Fedor is a normal guy. My wife told him what kind of person you were, and that was enough for him. In general, don't worry and don't make things up. We'll have to contact you, but not for free. The money will still be useful to you. Jane and everyone who was aware of the situation tried to support her. Denny and Lily brought children's clothes, which were too small for Max and Ilya, but were in almost perfect condition. The colors, of course, are not particularly girlish, but everything is good. And the Helga ska is very maneuverable and light. Helga did not know how to thank her brother, and especially her daughter-in-law, who provided her with housing and with a generous gesture turned her into a well-to-do lady. Now the inspectors had no chance to reproach the woman for not being able to provide her adopted daughter with decent living conditions. Having run around and collected a set of necessary documents, Helga, with a restless heart, went to the guardianship and trusteeship department. The woman sincerely spoke about her experiences about the found girl, and that contact had already been established between them. Diane is happy when she sees me, smiles, wanders with her eyes, follows me when I leave. And in general, from the first moment, when I took her in my arms on a frosty night, I had the feeling that Diane was my blood. I may not have given birth to her, but I feel a real kinship with her. However, the story did not touch the hearts of strict officials one bit. I don't think that your decision to adopt a child is serious. I understand that you are single now, but you might meet a man. And what then? What if he doesn't need your daughter? What decision will you make then? Will you hand her back like a boring toy and stay with a man? And years later, will you constantly reproach your daughter for not building your own feminine happiness because of her? I think you need to think again. It will be better for everyone. People who have experienced severe loss spend years mulling over the decision to adopt a child. And you just decided since you found it, then the girl should a priori belong to you. This is strange, don't you think? The woman still said something, but Helga, stunned by the refusal, no longer understood much of the meaning of her phrases. There was a noise in her head, and after awkwardly saying goodbye, she left the office because it was the turn of other applicants. As promised, Helga called Lily and told her about the negative result of her visit to the guardianship and trusteeship department. The daughter-in-law supported. My friend warned me that most likely I would have to go through a trial, but don't be afraid, this is normal practice. By the way, think again, maybe you were really excited? Try to deal with your desire without unnecessary emotions, because this is a very big responsibility. Helga said wearily. Yes, as much as I was thinking, I hardly sleep at night, almost without a break. I think around the clock whether I can give poor Diane the real motherly love and care she deserves. So far, my opinion is clear. She will definitely be better off in a family than in a government institution, where the staff most likely does not have enough time for such poor fellows. The employees there are good, but they can't give in to everyone. Well then, don't be sad. Let's use all our resources and victory will be ours. The conversation calmed Helga down quite a bit, and although she was afraid that insomnia would overcome her again that night, she fell asleep almost immediately after returning home and walking with Frodo. The woman even forgot about food. And it's good that the alarm clock on the smartphone was set in advance for the required time of getting up. However, this precaution was even unnecessary. The faithful dog, obeying some natural feeling, woke up the owner a few minutes before the nasty bell rang. Helga had to tell Alice about the failure, and the boss surprisingly provided her subordinate with moral support. I admit, I somehow admire your determination to fight for a girl you don't know. It's a pity that your running around the authorities has so far been without result. After all, as far as I understand, this means that the schedule will have to be rearranged again. Well, nothing. I think the girls will cooperate. I have plans to open a location in the area where you live, and as soon as all the formalities are ready, they will transfer you there. I warn you right away, the salary at first may be less than here, but I think there are prospects for improvement. Helga, inspired by the support of her boss, went to her workplace. A transfer to a new location could actually make her life much easier and save valuable time that she is currently spending on the road. However, for now it was necessary to act precisely in the circumstances that prevailed at the moment. Helga, whose income had noticeably decreased while running around various authorities, tried to save money, but still could not deny herself the pleasure of looking into the children's departments whenever possible to look for things for her future daughter. She had no doubt that, even through court, or even several court hearings, she would be able to achieve her goal. Once, in a special department located in a large shopping center, a woman, turning into an aisle with toys, almost collided head-on with her ex. Andrew was noticeably embarrassed and tried to hide his emotions behind a cheeky tone. "Hello, what fate are you? Are you picking up anything for your nephews? Or is there something I don't know about you?" The man, following his habit, smoothed his hair with his palm, and Helga noticed the sparkling rim of a brand new wedding ring on his finger. The meeting with her former roommate stirred resentment in Helga's soul, and she did not even try to answer him politely. "Why do you need to know anything about me?" With the hands of his sister, he threw me out of the apartment into which I, like some fool, invested money. And now one might think you are interested in something? Go somewhere your own way, and don't stand in my way. Andrew was taken aback. He did not expect such a rebuke from Helga, who, from her experience living together, was distinguished by meekness, tenderness, and a tendency to compromise. A man who married out of pure convenience and fell under the control of a strict wife has already regretted that he followed the lead of his family and entered into this profitable, but clearly unhappy marriage. The years spent with Helga now seemed to him the most golden time of his life. He would not mind restoring a relationship with her and receiving love and understanding from his former partner, although he was worried about how to do everything so that his legal wife would not know about the affair. Andrew understood that in this case the costs of marriage would most likely be in vain, but whoever doesn't take risks, as you know, doesn't drink champagne. Thinking quickly, the man tried to soften his impression. "Sorry, Helga. I still think that you are the best thing that has happened to me in this life. Please forgive me for hurting you. I was wrong, and I wish I could go back in time and do things differently. But unfortunately, no one has yet invented a time machine." Andrew joked, trying to evoke positive emotions in his ex. But Helga grimaced as if she had bitten off a slice of lemon and admitted, "Andrew, I was also mistaken. It was not worth wasting time on you and money on your apartment. These funds would be very useful to me now. But what can we do now? Just spit and move on with your life. Okay, no need to waste my time again. Goodbye." Andrew tried to tell Helga something else, but she hastily left the department, and he did not dare to follow her. However, it seemed to him that he still had a chance to get his modest mistress back. After thinking a little, the man deposited money on Olia's card in the amount of about 2 of her salaries, hoping that this would begin their dialogue. He imagined how the proud woman would return the amount to him, and then gradually they would begin to communicate. But Andrew miscalculated. Helga really needed the money. And having received a message about their receipts, she immediately rushed to hire a good lawyer to conduct the trial. Lily helped find the specialist, who in turn learned about him from her friend who had gone through this unpleasant process. Surprisingly, the amount received was definitely enough for the fee. Helga saw this as a very good sign and was not mistaken. The lawyer brilliantly defended the interests of her and the found baby. At the beginning of the summer, after almost 8 months of struggle for Diane, the girl was officially recognized as her daughter, and a completely new stage in their lives began. Alice, whose opening of a new salon was delayed, suggested that the employee go on paid leave for the first time. This, of course, is not a decree, but I think everything will be resolved successfully soon. You will be able to find a nanny for the girl while you work. Helga smiled happily. Thank you very much, Alice. I have so many helpers. Just a miracle. The daughter-in-law and the boys have arrived for the summer, and the neighbors are vying with each other to offer help. The stern boss smiled. Well, that's just wonderful. So, as soon as there is news, I will call you about the arrival of little Diane home. Helga organized a small celebration for the closest people who provided great support on the way to the goal. In addition to her brother and family, Jane and the district police officer along with her wife were invited. Those gathered tried not to make noise, and Max and George, in the company of their tailed friend, were almost constantly in the room where their new relative was quietly sleeping in the crib. Helga warmly thanked everyone who helped in her difficult task. Consider this a little belated gift, but what a gift. Now you have a daughter, and she has you. I wish you both good health, and so that you always understand each other and be happy. After a pleasant evening, Helga, her brother's family, and little Diane remained in the house. The smart dog lay down not in his favorite chair, but right next to the baby's crib. Max ran to the adults and showed them this touching picture. Look, Diane now has a personal nanny. Lily hugged her son tenderly. Frodo guarded you and your brother. And while talking with you, I realized how to treat children. It's quite normal that he took the baby under his wing. Such a smart dog is simply not capable of doing anything differently. With the advent of her adopted daughter, Helga seemed to have a second wind. Lily sometimes jokingly said, "Listen, it seems like you don't even need help. You get up before everyone else, have time to clean the house and take care of the boys and daughter. It's like I'm relaxing here at a resort." Although at the stage of collecting documents for adoption, people who knew about the situation tried to warn Helga and repeatedly tried to tell her that the girl may have hidden pathologies. The fears turned out to be unfounded. That's what the old paramedic said. The baby received excellent care right up until the moment she was thrown onto the street. The girl grew up and had practically no serious illnesses, so ordinary childhood ailments. And in terms of intelligence with age, she could give a head start not only to Ilya, but also to Max. The issue with work was also resolved perfectly. Alice managed to open a new salon, where she invited Helga to work. The journey from home to work and back now took very little time, and the woman was completely happy. One day Andrew called her, and in a trembling voice began to invite her on a romantic date. And Helga, listening to her former roommate, wondered how she could even fall in love with him. After saying goodbye and pressing end, she blocked the number that she once knew by heart, and felt that she had now truly turned the page on the past completely. Even if Andrew turned out to be not entirely a scoundrel and transferred money for the repairs made, the woman still did not want to communicate with him. She had already spent part of her life on him and no longer wanted to give him even a few minutes. 5 years flew by unnoticed. Diane grew up smart and affectionate, refuting all doubts about bad heredity from the parents who abandoned her. Watching the girl reach for knowledge, Helga decided to enroll her daughter in preparatory courses at school. The meeting for parents had already passed, and the woman and Diane even managed to buy all the stationery that the teacher recommended. The first lesson was supposed to take place in a week. Changes were coming, but Helga still had no idea how large-scale they would be. In the meantime, we could enjoy the still warm evenings of the coming autumn. Twilight was in no hurry to drive away the daylight, and the woman, without fear, let her daughter walk in the yard in the company of Frodo. Helga had no doubt about the dog's prudence. And even if Diane had planned a dangerous prank, her faithful bodyguard would have prevented any trouble. One day, looking out the window, A woman saw her, Diane, talking with an unfamiliar man. The dog stood between the interlocutors, blocking the little mistress, but Helga's heart pinched unpleasantly. Anticipating danger, she hurriedly went down the steps of the stairs, stood next to the dog, the daughter of a stranger, and warily asked, "Good evening. Did you want something? Are you looking for someone?" The man, looking up from his careful examination of Diane, looked up at the woman and, trying not to scare anyone, said hello, introduced himself, and explained, "Good evening. I'm Justin. Have you heard of such an entrepreneur from the neighboring region?" Helga shook her head, and the man continued, "Apparently I need to talk with you about the events of almost 6 years ago. It so happens that it seems that you have perfectly solved the problem that you acquired because of a person close to me. There can be no excuse for what happened in the past, and I am indebted to you forever." Helga's legs almost gave way. She realized that the man had a direct relationship with the girl whom she raised as her own daughter, and frantically wondered what to do and how not to scare the little girl with unexpected information. Unable to think of anything better, the woman asked Diane, "Daughter, take the apples and take them to your grandmother together with Frodo. Sit there and entertain her a little." Otherwise, she complained that her relatives had not come to visit for a long time. "Play something, and in the meantime, I'll talk to our guest. Don't rush home. I'll come for you myself." The girl looked sternly at the man and asked with narrowed eyes, "And you won't offend my mother?" Justin put his hand to his heart and promised, "I won't offend you for anything." Diane hesitated for a few seconds, and then turned to the dog. "Frodo, let's go to Grandma. I'll just carry the apples, otherwise I know you. You won't be able to carry half of them." The dog, who adored his owner, only waved his tail in response. Helga watched Diane and dog go out the gate and invited an unexpected visitor. "Why are we standing on the street? Let's at least go to the veranda. Otherwise, I feel the conversation will be long." There was a table and chairs on Helga's veranda, and the woman suggested, "Sit down and tell me. Otherwise, my nerves are already on edge." The man did not refuse the offer, and sitting on a chair, told a story that made Helga feel uncomfortable. "In the past, my family and I lived in a neighboring state, 300 kilometers from your town. My wife, Margaret, gave birth to my daughter, Dorothy. Beautiful, healthy. I tried to make life easier for the woman I love. We also had an au pair. She did the cleaning and cooking. More precisely, she was an old friend of my mother and practically part of our family. This woman raised me and treated me, if not like a son, then like an adored nephew. Aunt Isabel and Margaret received her very warmly, and she really doted on her daughter. Everything was great. Both the house and the business are well promoted, and with prospects for development right up to the capital. In general, I was so successful that my competitors decided to destroy me, not physically. No, not at all. On the other hand, they approached him in order to hit him harder. They wanted to trample him mentally. And for me, this was worse than death. As I found out completely after the fact, a person was hired who studied all the information about my wife, found an approach to her, and then began a secret affair with her. It's probably a banal story. But being in this whole situation is so disgusting that all the comedy is not even felt. I would almost not blame my wife for her affair, if not for the sad consequences. One day I received photographs by email in which my wife and a man I didn't know were having fun. At first I just wanted to break her neck, but I pulled myself together to do the irreparable and instructed a good friend to check if the pictures were real. You never know, maybe it's editing. But the timid hope was dashed by reality. Margaret did have some fun on the side. Moreover, the pictures were definitely fresh, because they showed a tattoo that she had done quite recently. Of course, it's also my fault that my wife fell for it and cheated on me. I was always missing at work. One issue urgently needed to be resolved, then another. Of course, Aunt Isabel took care of the household chores, but it was my support that Margaret needed. It was this thirst for warmth and participation that this scoundrel caught her. I don't know how I was able to survive the betrayal then. I spoke harshly to Margaret, but within the law, without assault. She cried, promised that she would break off the connection, which jeopardized our marriage. I loved her very much then and decided to give her another chance, without even realizing that this would be a huge mistake. About a week after Margaret and I had an unpleasant conversation, and we seemed to agree to try to save our marriage, she disappeared along with her daughter. Aunt Isabel's wife told her that she needed to go to the children's clinic for a scheduled appointment, and she left home. This has happened before. Therefore, there was no reason not to release them. When Margaret and Dorothy did not return for dinner, Aunt Isabel became worried and began calling my wife to find out if it would make sense to reheat the food. But the phone was unreachable. Even then, there was no alarm. Aunt Isabel told me that Margaret and her daughter seemed to be late at the clinic, where appointments are usually on time and there should be no queues. And she asked to go there, saying that her heart was not in the right place. I rushed and found out that Margaret and her daughter had not appeared there at all. That's when I got worried. While driving along the route to the house, I was looking through my email and, having opened a letter demanding money and naturally a ban on contacting law enforcement agencies, I almost got into an accident by sharply slamming on the brakes. I did not officially contact the police. I was very afraid that I was being watched or wiretapped. And as best I could, I calmly drove to the house, and through Aunt Yu, whom I sent away from the house, fearing the wiretapping, I contacted a good friend so that he could help unofficially investigate the disappearance of his wife and daughter. He advised me to agree to all demands, and I did everything exactly according to the instructions of the criminals, and began to wait for news. I believed that I could make up for this money. But terrible information came. The police department called me and informed me that they had found Margaret's burnt-out car. There were 2 bodies inside an adult woman and a baby. An examination followed. It was established that both lasting bodies belonged to my own girls. Aunt Isabel had a heart attack, and as a result, almost on the same day, 3 people, without whom I could not imagine my existence, ended up in their graves. I then began to get drunk almost every day, and some kind of supernatural anger helped me not to completely slide to the very bottom. I wanted to find the people responsible for the deaths of Margaret, Dorothy, and Aunt Isabel. But it was no use. The man seemed to have disappeared. My ill-wishers seemed to calm down. They even expressed sympathy. But running the business became completely uninteresting to me, and I sold it. Almost for next to nothing. You could say that he gave most of the money to charity, and he gradually began to learn to move on with his life. Justin fell silent, and Helga became perplexed. If the examination found that his wife and daughter died, it turns out that Diane cannot be involved in this tragic story. Why then did the man come to them? Was the expert mistaken, and the visitor buried someone else instead of his wife and daughter? The man seemed to have considered these unvoiced questions in Helga's eyes, because he spoke again and startled the woman with his confession. You seem to have already guessed that the girl you are raising is my daughter. Helga involuntarily began to shake her head, unable to say anything. And Justin, realizing that it was difficult for a woman to accept such news, gently began to tell him further. With difficulty, with the support of my parents, who themselves could barely hold on after the news of the death, but I stopped drinking. Although he changed his field of activity, he went back to business. What else did I have left? I didn't want to upset my parents, so as not to lose them. This is how I spent these endlessly long years, stretching from the moment I last saw my wife and daughter. I never became close to a single woman, fearing betrayal. And 2 days ago, returning from work, I saw a female figure at the gate of the house. I was surprised after all. Strangers usually don't wander around our ranch. I thought that maybe one of the neighbors' housekeepers or nannies needed something. He drove up and got out of the car. I come closer, and it's Margaret herself standing in front of the gate. She was emaciated. There were bruises under her eyes covering half her face. But undoubtedly my wife appeared before me, swaying. Of course, I was afraid for my own mind, suspecting that I had gone crazy. I went to visit my wife and daughter at the cemetery, and then suddenly there was such a turn. Margaret fell to her knees in front of me and began to beg for conversion, but I had no time for these sentiments. What worried me more was not even the fact that under the name of my wife, some other woman had found her last refuge in the churchyard. The most important thing for me was to find out why Margaret returned alone and where my daughter went. I dragged my wife into the house and began asking questions. And the more she talked, the worse I felt. It turns out that on the day of her disappearance, Margaret went to meet her lover, but not for fun. The man decided to get money from my wife using a video that he shot secretly and promised to post on all available networks in order to disgrace her, and at the same time undermine my business reputation. how Margaret cried when she said that she decided to take Dorothy with her, so that after meeting her lover she could drop into the clinic. The scoundrel decided to up the ante and said plans had changed. The money that Margaret brought was not enough for him. He demanded that she live in one of the houses as a living toy. Neither tears, nor pleas, nor promises of money could bribe this cynic. The only thing my wife could agree on was to save her daughter. So that the baby could not be recognized, she was changed, and her lover allowed Margaret's note to be printed on a printer, but not written by hand. Moreover, he strictly warned that if the text contains a hint of the name of the girl or her parents, then Dorothy will not survive. Laughing, he said that he would not feel sorry for the child. Frightened Margaret, of course, agreed to everything. She, naive, thought that I would certainly look for my daughter, and I didn't know that a lot of people were involved in this, and that false cases had already been prepared and the expertise was bought on the vine. Margaret was in some country hotel, and she was entertaining the crowd. And a week ago I managed to escape and get home. She may be exhausted with obvious health problems, but she accomplished the almost impossible and gave me hope. After listening to my wife's story, I realized that our daughter might be alive. We had to bring heaven to earth, but we managed to find the bribed expert and even get on the trail of the found little girl, about the same age as our Dorothy. It's good that Margaret roughly figured out how long they had been traveling before Dorothy was taken from her. It's just a miracle that you haven't moved anywhere. Otherwise, the search would have been delayed. It will probably be difficult for the girl to accept the truth, but Margaret and I are her parents. In fairness, it is we who must educate and raise her. We, of course, want to offer you compensation. We'll pay you any amount you name. Helga felt bad only in her worst dreams people came to her and tried to take Diane away. A woman would jump up screaming from such visions, invariably frightening the sensitive Frodo, and sometimes even her adopted daughter, who was generally known to sleep soundly. And now the nightmare is happening in reality, and it's impossible to wake up. The silence that settled on the veranda dragged on, and then Helga went on a tirade. Do you want to know what compensation will suit me? I'll tell you, simply leave me and my daughter Diane alone. I don't need anything more from you. Let me raise my daughter in peace, and don't dare interfere in our lives. A baby is not a toy. And for that matter, your wife has no excuse. Why the hell did she go there with her little daughter? It was clear that she was going towards the criminal. Again, this man of hers could easily do anything to the girl, and how would your thick-headed wife control him? Oh, he allowed her to print the letter. What a benefactor. Do you know that your daughter was planted under that apple tree for me? Frosty night. Did you see the dog that stood in front of your daughter? It was he who sensed that someone had appeared in the yard. If it weren't for him, it's scary to even think what would have happened to the baby. She was essentially left to the mercy of fate. Will it freeze or not? Do you think I'll give you my daughter so calmly? What for? No, I will fight and will definitely win. We are used to exchanging everything for money. Everything is for sale. Do you think you just need to name the price and you can calmly ruin fate? Who do you think you are? Helga took a breath and realized that businessmen have much more opportunities. She was frightened by the prospect of being left without a daughter and began to convince the man. You are an adult, and you understand that it will be difficult for a girl to change something in life. How can I explain to her that she will now have two mothers? Diane grew up in my arms. She's used to me and loves me. Can you imagine how much harm this unexpected news could cause her? Please, let's leave everything as it is. I tell you, Helga, no need to shock Diane. Please, if your daughter is dear to you, spare her. Don't ruin her fate. Of course you are running a business, and they are better off financially apparently. But is it just about money? Justin wanted to object, but at that moment his phone rang so loudly that Helga even flinched from the ringing. She saw how the man turned pale, almost silently listening to his interlocutor, and guessed that the complicated tragic story had received an unexpected continuation. At the end of the conversation, Justin roared. So you were completely powerless? Is this what you want to tell me? The voice from the receiver monotonously explained something, and Helga could hear the words. We sympathize. Sorry, we did everything we could. The woman realized that something irreparable had happened, and Justin, who ended the conversation, confirmed her assumption. Margaret died. This time there can be no mistake. I put her in the hospital with a doctor I knew so that they could treat her, at least give her some vitamins, and she, after being there for a while, just went out the window. Doctors tried to save Margaret, but her body was too exhausted. She was given anesthesia, she just fell asleep. Her heart stopped beating. Justin looked confused, and compassionate Helga brought him water and a sedative from her personal supplies. "Here, take this medicine, you will feel better." The man thanked him in confusion and got up to leave. However, before reaching the door a few steps, he turned to Helga and asked, "Let's postpone the continuation of this conversation. I will arrive in 4 days, having previously agreed on a time convenient for you, and then we will decide what to do." Helga looked after Justin, and only when he got into the car parked at the beginning of the street, she hurried to her neighbor to get Diane, whom, it turns out, her parents called Dorothy. Frodo noticed the mistress in advance and opened the unlocked door for her. And Jane, who was happily playing checkers with the girl, immediately noticed that Olia had no face. After waiting for Diane to leave, Jane asked in a whisper, "What kind of guy came to see you? Ex yours or what? I really wanted to call Fyodor so that he would look at you by chance." Helga, who herself still couldn't believe the sudden turn of fate, did not tell her neighbor anything, limiting herself to gratitude for helping to keep the girl occupied and a promise. "I'll tell you everything later, but now we'll go. I'm kind of tired today." On the way home, Helga squeezed Diane's hand so tightly that she even playfully asked, "Mom, are you afraid that, like ours, one day I'll take a balloon and fly away?" The woman almost burst into tears, but tried not to let the girl notice her depressed mood. "Sorry, Diane, I was just lost in thought." Helga spent the whole night without sleep. She looked on the internet for all the information she could find about Justin, and was surprised that practically no sharply negative statements were published about him. Most of the articles were, of course, devoted to the misfortune that happened to his wife and daughter. Helga looked closely at the posted photos, but from the small images, and even in poor resolution, it was almost impossible to make out whether Diane or another child was in them. In the morning, after taking her daughter to kindergarten, the woman rushed to visit her daughter-in-law, warning her at work that she would be late for an hour. Lily, after listening to her, was silent for a long time, and then supported her relative. "Diane is officially your daughter. Perhaps her father can go to court. But it seems to me it is better to try to resolve the matter peacefully," Helga admitted. "Lily, I'm incredibly scared. Maybe I should just drop everything, take Diane and go somewhere, so that her father will never find us?" The daughter-in-law nipped the idea of running away in the bud, without even hearing to the end what country Helga had decided to leave for. "In my opinion, doing this will only complicate everything. You say that this Justin will come to you in 4 days. This means it will be approximately Saturday. So that's great. Denny and I are also present at this meeting. And it would also be a good idea to invite the lawyer who helped Diane win the case." When Justin called Helga and they agreed on a time to meet, the woman realized that there was nowhere to retreat. The businessman, to the surprise of the woman, her brother, daughter-in-law, and lawyer, arrived alone for the fateful negotiations. He had several large packages in his hands. Having met and shook hands with the men, Justin explained the contents of his burden. "These are all gifts for my daughter." After everyone was settled, the businessman began negotiations that were more difficult than he had ever conducted. "Helga, I am immensely grateful to you for preventing Dorothy, let me call her that, from staying in a government institution for a long time. I am ashamed that I believed in the results of the examination and did not double-check them. After all, having done this, the search for my daughter would not have been stopped, and we would have met with her much earlier. I've been thinking all these days, and he made a difficult decision. Let's not shock the girl. You, Helga, were absolutely right when you said that the truth would only bring her suffering. Let everything remain as it is. I have only one request. Under any pretext, allow me to come and visit my daughter. I won't bother you often, but at least on weekends. Let's go somewhere together." The lawyer, realizing that his services would not be needed, hurried to leave, and Justin, Denny, Helga, and Lily sat, thinking a little more about how to introduce Diane to her father. As a man who cares about the beauty of his nails and comes in for a manicure, or as a colleague, Lily came up with a brilliant idea. "Oh, what's there to invent? Justin, come as a fan. Then gifts for Diane would be appropriate." Everyone agreed on this option. And Lily's idea turned out to be very promising. In the process of communication, sincere sympathy arose between Helga and Justin. A year after they met, which began with extreme stress, they got married, and the man legally became the father of his own daughter. A little later, he resolved all the issues in his hometown and moved to Ole and Diane to always be close to those he loves. Too much. Andrew was in a lot of pain. Emily's pain faded into the background. She was scared out of her mind. 3 weeks passed, but Andrew still couldn't recover. He couldn't eat. He felt like he was the reason William had left the family. "Andrew, it's not your fault," his mother tried to convince him. "It's just that your father betrayed you and me." "Then I didn't listen to him. I went to play with those boys," the son cried. "They were smoking. Dad found out and thought I smoked with them. He didn't forgive me. He didn't love me after that." Emily clutched her head. Andrew felt so much guilt that there seemed to be no way out of it. A month passed and Emily decided to file for divorce after all. She had gained some moral strength. William knew about it right away. He got in his car, headed for his mother-in-law and father-in-law's house. He didn't know what to do next. On the one hand, he loved Emily and his son. The latter was very dear to him, but everything in their lives had become monotonous. He wanted new impressions. He began to feel that he was getting old. Perhaps that's what drove him to adventure. Irene Alexis, Gregory Myron, his son-in-law, lowered his head. "I ask you to speak to me." The father-in-law looked at him angrily. He would have loved to punch him in the face. But Irene Alexis was a mother herself. She was worried about both Emily and Andrew. "Billy," she sighed. "Do you realize the pain you've caused them? But what were you missing?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "I want to apologize to Emily. I love her. I want to go back to them." "I seriously doubt she'll take you back," my mother-in-law said with annoyance in her voice. "But what were you thinking? You've got a mistress under your nose. But you will come back. And how will you live? Emily will see the tank all the time. We'll leave here," suddenly declared son-in-law. "There won't be any tank there." "Where to?" My father-in-law entered the conversation. "Do you think the rumor about you will not reach there?" he scolded. Anyway, Emily's parents promised to talk to her. Naturally, she didn't want to hear about her husband's return. "Mom, don't tell me anything about him," she said angrily. "I hate him. I'll divorce him." "Emily, listen to me." Irene Alexis tried to look at the problem from every angle. "I don't care what you decide. But I'm asking you to think about Andrew. The child is suffering." And it was true. Emily burst into tears. Her heart couldn't bear the sadness of her son. He thought of his father all the time, and the fact that William hadn't shown up all this time made it worse. And then the day came when Andrew didn't come home from school. When Emily was on duty, his grandfather would pick him up. But the woman's father reported that Andrew didn't show up today. Emily called in a substitute to cover her shift. Of course, there was nothing the police could do. So they searched for Andrew on their own. "Billy," Irene said excitedly to Alexis. "Andrew's missing. Has he come to see you?" "No," he said worriedly. "I'll be right over," he promised and got into the car. As much as Emily felt bad, she didn't say anything. Everyone started looking for Andrew. They found him at one of the playgrounds. "Oh, my son." His mother rushed over to him. "Demochka." She started kissing the child. "Daddy." When he saw William, he rushed to him. "Daddy," cried the boy. You could say that that incident had determined everything. As much as Emily didn't want to, she made the choice to reconcile with William because of her son. Everyone sat at Emily's parents' house and had a serious conversation. "We're going to move to another town," the son-in-law said at once. Andrew didn't take a step away from him. Emily agreed. She realized that no matter how womanizer was her husband, he sincerely loved his son. Perhaps that was why William had just taken a mistress. Emily had no intention of leaving her family. But that didn't make her feel any better. Cheating was still cheating, no matter how you looked at it. 2 months later, they sold the house, and Emily and her family moved to a neighboring town, which was 70 kilometers away. They bought a small house, as it was a more promising place, and accordingly, life was more expensive. Emily got a job as a post nurse in one of the hospitals. William found a crew and started doing repairs with them. Such services were in great demand. Andrew recovered quickly, enjoyed going to his new school, and made friends very quickly. Emily's life, despite the fact that she was doing the same things as before, seemed to take a new direction. "Why don't we have a baby?" her husband once said to her. "A child would bring us joy." "I'm not ready yet," she sighed. "I've been traveling a lot in the last year, but you're already 38. Where else can I put it off?" He objected. "And I'm not getting any younger either. I'm already 42. You can't say Emily got married late. She was 25. It's just that her job was stressful, so you can't get pregnant right away. "Let's revisit this conversation in 6 months," the wife asked. Still, Emily had her doubts. She kept thinking that the day would come when William would cheat on her again. "There won't be any more cheating," she assured herself. "We're fine. Why should our past determine our future?" But no matter how much she set herself up for the best, her intuition told her that something was bound to happen in her life. Maybe that was the real reason Emily didn't want a second child. It was May. Emily and her family had already been living in the new place for 8 months. Everyone had gotten used to it and had no idea how they had lived in their hometown a year ago. Andrew had grown up. He had already turned 11. The boys in the new school were more advanced. The boy had somehow grown up quickly. He was very seriously interested in modeling. He and 2 of his friends went to a children's club where they built various ships in scale. "Very beautiful," praised Andrew's mother. "Son, how do you have the patience?" She laughed. "I would not be able to sit for hours and collect it all by crumbs." "You know, how interesting," Andrew said proudly. "We're going to exhibit in a competition." It wasn't that Andrew had grown cold to his father, but it was noticeable that he was now more interested in his friends than in his father. They still talked occasionally, especially when it came to their son's hobbies. But Emily could see that they had not become friends, and William was very tired. Sometimes there were urgent works, so that he could not even spend the night at home. And so Emily's life flowed in a new direction, and a few words about her work. In principle, the team was nothing. Emily immediately made a friend from the children's ward. The only one. The head therapist was a cold man. He even seemed stiff from the outside. And since Emily worked in his department, she still didn't understand how to communicate with him. Gregory Myron didn't seem to notice anyone. He was strict, but acted so professionally that without any doubt he could be called not only the best doctor of the hospital, but also of the whole region. Many, very many people bowed down to his talent, not that he admitted it. He paid no attention at all to rumors or anyone in his direction. He was constantly focused on his work. From the outside, it seemed that he could solve any task. There were enough instances where he alone was able to determine the true cause of an illness, and a man who was almost dying was discharged a month later. Gregory Myron didn't look like his usual self either. His hair was almost gray, but his face looked quite young. About 6 months later, Emily learned that he was only 47. It was Emily's shift when the doctor approached her. He looked concerned. "Emily," he said, "I need to pick you up for about an hour. I'll get Annie to keep an eye on the post. We're going to see a patient in 20 minutes. Be ready." Emily nodded. She rushed to Annie's procedure nurse. She informed her that the doctor had already spoken to her. "Annie, do you know what happened in there?" Emily asked. "He said it was a bad case," Annie replied. "There's an old woman. She's been in and out of the hospital a few times. Apparently she's gotten worse again. She has a son who keeps asking to be treated at home. And there's no room right now. I think that's why he's coming himself." Exactly 20 minutes later, the doctor came to pick Emily up and they headed to the address. Isaac Alexander was focused and silent. Emily was sometimes even afraid of his presence. He seemed sensual. So they reached the patient without a word. The doctor got out and headed for the entrance. The nurse hurried after him. The woman moaned. Emily's heart clenched. Isaac Alexander examined her and hesitated for a few moments. "Emily, take blood, urine," he said coldly. "I'll take a sample of the vomit myself." Isaac Alexander told the woman's son that he would call him in 2 days, and they would decide what to do. The doctor and the nurse went downstairs and got into his car. Isaac Alexander often drove his vehicle out on work-related errands, and Emily had never heard him ask his superiors for compensation. "I think it's something autoimmune," the doctor whispered. Emily flinched in surprise. "I think it's something masquerading as another disease," he continued. "How is that possible? Don't the tests tell us what the real cause is?" "You can do all the possible tests, ultrasounds and CT scans, and still not see the real cause," Isaac Alexander replied. "You see, we still don't know how the immune system works. We have only a superficial idea, like a small iceberg on the surface of the ocean, and a huge block hidden underwater. Too many factors affect this process. She has no serious diseases, no cancer. But she's falling apart before our eyes. What's happening to her? There's no answer. It's like something triggers and everything goes to hell. Then she goes into remission and everything's more or less fine." "What are you going to do with her?" Emily asked with interest. "Are you going to put her in the hospital?" "First we'll look at the tests," said Isaac Alexander. He stopped talking. They drove the rest of the way in silence, and Emily didn't ask any more questions. The workday continued, and she forgot about her morning commute. The night passed quietly, the May air putting her in a good mood. Emily lay on the couch and thought about her family. Maybe he's right, a thought popped into her head. Having a girl will strengthen our family. "Yeah, I'm getting sick of medicine." Emily felt herself tanning. For years she had been responsible in her work, but the fatigue was building up. She and William didn't have the opportunity to go anywhere on vacation. They were making a little more money, but living in the city meant more expenses. Andrew went to sports and a modeling class, which also required money. Will we be able to afford all this if we have a daughter, she wondered. Morning came. Emily cheered up. A couple more hours and she would be going home. She got up and went about her duties. The ward was quiet and she began filling out the many logs. It was almost 8 o'clock when Emily got ready to go home. Another nurse had come to take over her shift, and Emily told her what had happened in the meantime. There were 3 post nurses on the ward who were constantly changing. One of them was a very quiet woman. Lila was in her 50s and she usually didn't get involved in anything. But Amber, who came in now, was noted for her talkativeness and tendency to gossip. Closely, Amber jumped up to her. "I have an anniversary in 3 days. You are required to attend. Do you understand me?" She burned a glare at her coworker. "Yeah, I'll be working anyway," Emily smiled. "What's your anniversary?" She was confused. "Well, of course it is. 40 years, Amber announced proudly. "There's even going to be a robot." That's what coworkers called Isaac Alexander among themselves. Can you imagine? When I told him that, say, "Let's eat cake, drink juice," he nodded to me in agreement. "I doubt he'll even eat the cake," Emily laughed. "I've never seen him at a meal. Here's coffee." Yeah, he's weird in general," Amber whispered in her ear. "I heard he couldn't save his wife, so he takes his anger out on everyone." What happened to her? Curiosity piqued Emily. "Didn't know he was married?" "Yeah, she had something serious going on there. He fought for her life. Took her to New York for a couple years. But nothing helped," Amber quickly echoed. "Although I can't imagine who would marry him at all." "Do you think he used to be this unsociable?" "Isaac Alexander is a good doctor," Emily sighed. "He's just unlucky. Well, as they say, keep it simple and people will reach out to you." The woman laughed. "Okay, until the anniversary." Emily didn't much like her co-worker's attitude toward the doctor. He was a genius. They didn't realize that. He may not have been able to save his wife, but he had helped hundreds, or even thousands of people, after all. The woman also thought about the fact that she didn't want to be present at all these meetings at work. It was enough that she had a friend in the children's ward. The rest of the staff didn't really get her attention. Emily walked into the house. Andrew was already at school and her husband William was at work. Despite the sleepless night, she didn't feel like sleeping. She sipped some hot tea and her body relaxed. Emily lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Thus began a new day for her. After lunch, Emily was already doing chores around the house. Dinner was on the stove, she was cutting a salad, went out to get some greens in the vegetable garden, and stopped. The smells of May wafted through the air. Emily had always dreamed of spending a few days watching spring come. But it had never worked out. There were always things to do at home, so she couldn't afford to just sit idle. Emily closed her eyes. It made the smells even more vivid. A bird sang to her left. It felt good. "I want a daughter," she said out loud and laughed at her own thoughts. Her soul sang. In the evening, her husband William returned from work. Andrew had returned from modeling. His eyes were burning. He spent almost half an hour telling his mother about his new job. Emily looked at him and realized that her boy had grown up a lot. A couple more years and he would turn into a guy. "Mom, we're going to a competition at the sports school. Can you give me some money?" He remembered soccer. Sure, she patted him on the head. "Son, how much do you need? I'll call your coach." Emily realized that her secret dream of quitting her job was simply unrealistic. She had always wanted her children to have a better life than she or her parents had. Her father and mother had done everything they could for her. But if they'd had the money, Emily would have chosen a different profession. Not to say she liked medicine. She had dreamed of becoming an architect or a designer as a child, but as they say, it didn't work out. Late in the afternoon, William returned. He ate quickly and went straight to bed. Emily marveled again at how their relationship with her son had changed in just over a year. Andrew was no longer as attached to William, perhaps still to his mother. But Emily could see that just a little more and Andrew would begin to live a life of his own already. "How strange does it feel," she thought as she went to bed. "Somehow I was sure that my son would always be a little boy who would depend on us." How quickly had things changed. The rest of the days flew by quickly. It was getting close to the weekend, which meant Emily had to go to work again. God, she'd completely forgotten about Amber. Emily remembered tonight. She needed to buy a gift. Nothing came to mind, and it was too late. Emily decided to give her coworker the money to buy what she wanted herself. As the morning began, the hustle and bustle began. Amber arrived at 9 with 2 large bags. She started setting the table. Emily was minding her own business. She took the history of the patient they had traveled to with the doctor at the time. The woman quickly ran her eyes over the test results. "Yeah, nothing much," she sighed. There was a slight elevation in the proteins in the general analysis, but it wasn't critical, just a fraction of a percent. Isaac Alexander is probably right. What if it all works on the principle of a wave and there was a failure? Then the indicators normalized. But it's already having repercussions. That's several cycles in a row. Emily wasn't a doctor, so she didn't really look into the problem. She didn't have the knowledge or experience. Amber came in. "Everyone is already in the nurse's room," she reported. Isaac Alexander looked tired. Everyone congratulated Amber. Emily slipped money into her pocket. The birthday girl glowed. "Most importantly, we wish you a speedy marriage." Annie raised her juice glass. "We're tired of waiting for you to find one." "Did you find him?" Amber said cryptically. "You won't believe it, just like I wanted. Tall, dark hair, green eyes, dimpled chin, about my age." "Wow," murmured the female half. Isaac Alexander was silent, but he looked pleased. "He came up to me on the street," Amber cheered. "He even wears a watch like I like, with a big face." Emily swallowed. Something niggled in her chest. She chased away the bad feeling. "And my favorite name is William," Amber declared. "Soon we'll be together, and I'll finally wear my wedding ring." The co-workers sat for half an hour, needing to return to their posts. Emily was pale. She didn't fully realize why she felt so heavy. The nurse walked over to her colleague, pretending to help her clear her desk. "Amber, I'm so happy for you," Emily said. "I hope your prince isn't married." "He's in the process of getting a divorce," she said happily. "Billy was unlucky with his wife, so it's her own fault she left him." "Does he have children?" Emily held her breath. Amber looked at her questioningly. I'm worried about you. I don't know what's going on. Well, yes, daughter, calmed the birthday girl. Why are you being such a baby? I'm not completely stupid. I know what I'm doing. Yes, Emily smiled wryly. Once again, I wish you well. Emily returned home the next day, but she still had her doubts. She could hardly wait until evening. It was about 11 p.m. when her husband returned. Hi, she went up to him. William, we hardly see each other. She lowered her eyes. Emily, what do you want? It's a big city. You can't just live here. You've got to make it work, he smiled. You know, I've been thinking about it, and I think you're right. I want to have a daughter, his wife said suddenly. William was taken aback at first, then put his arms around Emily and kissed her. I'm glad you said yes, he said in a pleased tone. It will be good for both of us. Emily calmed down that evening, falling asleep in her husband's loving arms. She didn't want to think about Amber or her fiancé anymore. Nearly 2 more weeks passed. Emily had already forgotten what had happened at her co-worker's anniversary party. Emily arrived early that day. Amber was dealing with a difficult patient. She had her cell phone on her desk. Suddenly it rang. Emily glanced at the screen. It said, "Beloved," something hot pulsed through her entire body. There was no response, and the phone went silent. Amber walked over. Emily informed her that someone had called her. The woman immediately grabbed the phone, pressing all the same name. Emily somehow miraculously looked at almost every digit of the number, except the last 2. The magazine fell out of her hands, and she hesitated, but Amber had already gone to the window. In a soft voice, she was telling her lover something. Emily sat down at the table. Everything in her head was upside down. For her, it was a matter of life and death and 2 numbers. God, was that really pounding in her temples? Emily quickly grabbed her phone, called her husband. The phone was busy. Her heart nearly jumped out. She kept pressing and pressing William's number. Tears streamed from her eyes. Finally, the dial tone went off. Amber came to the table. Emily, what's wrong? I'm at the facility, Billy's husband spoke quickly. The landlord arrived, giving us a scandal. I called the supervisor. Emily didn't know what to say. I was just worried, she barely said. And for good reason. He sighed. The boss won't pay us, and I'm so sick of it. You work, and then bang. For some reason we did nothing, and the house is shiny and the roof is intact, but somehow the owner doesn't see anything. Emily could barely contain herself, wiped away her tears, and went to the nurse's room. She was in a complicated emotional state. On the one hand, she felt like she was being cheated, and that made her seized with pain. On the other hand, she felt like it was all a coincidence, and she was just screwing with herself. Emily, come here. The door opened suddenly, and in walked Dr. Isaac Alexander. It was still 30 minutes before the start of her shift. Isaac Alexander's request seemed odd. Emily cleaned herself up so as not to give away her tears and made her way to the doctor. He asked her to sit down. I'm going on a business trip, he said seriously, and I need an assistant. I've already made arrangements with the head doctor. Tell me, what about your family? Will it be possible for you to be away for a few days? I know you have a son. Yes, Andrew is 11 now, the nurse replied, stammering. He's independent. He mostly gets himself home from his training and club. In all her years at the hospital, this was the first time she'd ever been sent on a business trip. All right then, Lily will be out tomorrow, Isaac informed Alexander. And I'll pick you up at 8. Be ready. Emily sat back in her chair, but the doctor was already immersed in his work. The nurse had left. Why me? She whispered. Wouldn't Amber be more suitable? She didn't have a family. It wasn't that Emily didn't want to go, but the whole thing seemed odd. Isaac Alexander never complimented her, and he never spoke to her except on business. Lily arrived in the evening, replacing Emily at the doctor's request. Now the nurses had to work together for a few days in 3 houses. Emily's husband couldn't believe his eyes. What happened? He asked. I'm going on a business trip tomorrow, she said. For 3 days. Billy, please take Andrew. He gets off much earlier than I do. It gets dark outside at 8 and he's home by half. Mom, don't worry about me. Her son came up to her. I'm not a little kid anymore. Yeah, she patted him on the head. Andrew, you can already say that you are a man? Have you sorted things out at work? Billy asked. Did you get paid? Yeah, our foreman came by with some guys. Anyway, they worked it out, he said. Do you know what a drag this is? Last month we didn't get paid for the repairs, which is almost $25,000 each. Emily hadn't thought much about it, but now she saw that almost every month someone would underpay or deliberately lower the price. All in all, William's job was precarious. Emily sighed. In the morning, a car pulled up at 8 sharp. She grabbed her bag, headed to the doctor's office. He greeted her coldly. Where are we going? She couldn't help herself. It's the first time I'm going on a business trip to a village, he replied calmly. We will spend the night at my relative's house. The residents have recently had serious kidney problems, and the region has asked me to take a look. Will you help me take tests, give injections? What could it be? Emily wondered. Some kind of waste being dumped. That's the thing. There aren't any businesses there, Isaac Alexander replied. They sent me an ultrasound. His kidneys are in a deplorable state, even to the point of kidney failure. The hospital in the municipal center is already overcrowded. I'm looking at those who are at home now. The local paramedic can't cope. We'll take the blood and urine to the lab this afternoon. Emily realized they had a tough job ahead of them. It was about the critically ill. At almost 11 o'clock, they pulled into the village. It was like a ghost. The streets were empty. Isaac Alexander stopped near one house and entered himself. After a while, he called out to Emily as well. The master is in the hospital now, he said. He knows I'll be with you for a few days at his place. Don't be afraid. The medical staff quickly dropped their belongings and began to go door to door. The pain and suffering made Emily's blood boil in her veins. Many lay half asleep. The paramedic was giving them painkillers, as there was nothing else he could do. Emily saw Isaac Alexander coldly examining one patient after another. She took blood and urine for analysis and placed them in special containers. Now into town, the doctor commanded. We were promised emergency tests. We don't have much time. What do you think? Did you find something? Emily looked at him with interest. Isaac Alexander, is this some kind of epidemic? No, I think it's something in the water, he replied. I've already collected 5 samples from the wells. We'll stop at the river and the lake on the way now. We'll have to take a look. They quickly took all the necessary things and drove into town. The doctor was silent. He was thinking hard about something. It looks like oil, the doctor's voice finally broke the silence. The toxic effect of heavy metals. If there aren't any factories around here, then what is it? Emily hesitated. You know, the best way is to walk around the village with a metal detector. And everything will fall into place at once, the doctor sighed. Some idiot buried some heavy metal residue somewhere. God knows what he did with them. But if we're talking about some kind of manufacturing, it's very possible. But how? I mean, they check cars at checkpoints. How could they smuggle this stuff in? Well, lead, cadmium, arsenic, for example. I'm not sure about mercury. Aluminum doesn't have such an effect on humans. They're more afraid of it. But the others, it's enough to lose 5 or 10 pounds somewhere near the source. And they didn't do it now. Maybe 6 months ago. It's just that now it's all gone into the groundwater and it's coming out of the wells. The car stopped outside the local hospital. Emily realized they'd come to the next town over. This whole situation was freaking her out. Isaac Alexander took all the biological material to the laboratory and started talking to the head doctor. And Emily stood aside and thought about her own. Until almost 3 o'clock, the doctor was busy examining the injured patients. Unfortunately, 3 had already died. The kidneys were too seriously damaged. In addition, the small town hospital did not have expensive medicines. It was almost 8 when Isaac Alexander approached Emily again. She, too, helped him from time to time. We're going home, he said. We'll We'll stop at some store on the way. Get something for dinner, the doctor offered tiredly. Unfortunately, my relative hasn't gotten any better. All we can do is wait. Emily, did you have to travel so much during the day that you couldn't even talk? Isaac Alexander himself went to the store, bought food and water. Back in his college days, he made scrambled eggs in the kitchen. Although you could say, nothing has changed in my life since those times. I'm not a foodie at all. I don't have enough time for that. I'm not much of a cook either, Emily smiled, although my family status obliges me to. But family is always a support, replied Isaac Alexander. I can't say that I don't like loneliness, but sometimes he fell silent. I heard that your wife died, Emily ventured. I'm sorry. Well, that was a long time ago, he sighed. Besides, I'm so caught up in my work that I try not to think about it. Well, let's drink tea and go to bed. Tomorrow is not going to be an easy day. Perhaps we'll be able to get some results. Emily cleared the table. Isaac Alexander showed her the room to make her own bed in the next room. The woman had already called her husband. He was home. Andrew was already asleep. The busy day kept Emily from returning to her thoughts. She closed her eyes. A green meadow appeared in front of her, and Emily heard some voices. The vision turned into a dream, and the woman fell deeply into it. She awoke abruptly. Though still light at heart, the dream did not bode well for her. She was marrying William, saw her beautiful dress, her veil. Something will happen, she muttered, and she heard the door creak open. But something was catching. The doctor was already up, putting the kettle on in the kitchen. Emily came to her senses, and having changed her clothes, left the room. Good morning, he said as dryly as before. Let's have breakfast. We need to see the patients, and then we'll go back to the city. Both were silent, drinking coffee. Emily even liked Isaac Alexander's company. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry. Toward the end, she couldn't take it anymore. Why did you take me? After all, I have not worked with you for so long, she asked. That's exactly the reason. I know the others very well, he said seriously. Emily was silent. She didn't quite understand what the doctor meant, but she didn't ask. 2 of the patients got worse. They had to be sent to the hospital. Isaac Alexander didn't seem nervous, but Emily could tell by the way his cheekbones moved. The city had gotten the first results. The prognosis was unfavorable, but just as I thought, lead and arsenic, he sighed. They dumped something right where the artesian pools were, brought the waste in and just poured it out of the barrels. Emily was shocked, but from the results, the water was the problem. The heavy metal levels were more than 20 times higher. The administration had already banned the use of the spring water for any purpose. Since few people kept livestock in the village, the deaths were not so widespread. The goats suffered the most. Isaac Alexander called the region time and time again, beating out the necessary drugs. The case reached New York. It was impossible to delay it, threatened the death of people. More doctors came to the village from other districts. The seriously ill began to be sent to places where there were opportunities for treatment and could be connected to the machines. The 3rd day was over. Emily and the doctor were going home. The relative they were staying with was feeling better, so there was hope for Isaac Alexander. Is that your brother? Emily asked him on the way home. I'm very happy for him and for you. No, he is my wife's brother, Isaac Alexander answered. After her death, we sometimes communicate. Emily sank back into herself, remembering last night's dream. Her whole body was covered with goosebumps. Actually, they were supposed to arrive tomorrow morning, but Isaac Alexander decided to return at night. Emily didn't bother calling the household, carefully opened the wicket gate, then inserted the key as well, and the front door opened. The house was dark. Emily went in to see her son. He was asleep. She headed to her room and William was gone. Her wife walked to the hall, but he was absent there as well. She walked toward the garage. William always drove the car in for the night, and to her amazement, the car wasn't there either. Emily felt dizzy and dialed William. He didn't answer. It was 2 on the clock. God, where is he? She sobbed. Her nerves had frayed over the last few days, and Emily couldn't keep her cool. She could barely sleep. She had to stay home tomorrow, and her shift started the day after. Mom, hi. Andrew was surprised to see her early in the morning. I thought I would see you only in the evening. Son, where is father? She asked in a trembling voice. Did you see him last night? Yes. When I went to bed, he was at home. Andrew answered at once. Yeah, he'd already left for work. Look at the time. Dad's got a big order now, so he's leaving early these days. So you haven't seen him in the mornings? Emily asked. Andrew, answer me. No, shrugged his son. Mom, what's going on? We weren't even expecting you until tonight. Dad said you'd go straight to work from your business trip. That was right. That was Emily's plan at first, but the other post nurse gave her until tomorrow morning to rest. Emily had forgotten to warn William about that. Something's not right here, she thought. When Andrew left for school, she wondered, where has he been sleeping all this time? It's no use asking him. I must find out for myself. William opened his eyes and stretched sweetly. Amber lay next to him. She was still asleep. The man got up and began to dress. This has to end, he muttered to himself. Our affair had gone on too long. Still, William couldn't help himself. He didn't know what he wanted. He didn't want to lose Emily, because she was a reliable person. With her, he could spend a peaceful old age. And if anything, she would look after him. On the other hand, he was bored. He stood and looked at himself in the mirror and saw great potential. Except with Emily, it wasn't being realized. He wanted passion, crazy emotions, in general, everything that usually happens with mistresses. William forgot about Tammy all too quickly. He no longer felt bad about it, and Emily wouldn't know about it. Well, he'd go out for a couple months. It's nothing. He'd still be with his wife, he thought. The most interesting thing was that only in the middle of the novel William learned that Amber works in the same hospital where his wife works. Moreover, they were, you could say, co-workers. This confused William at first. He immediately wanted to break up with Amber, but she was so into him that he realized not yet ready to leave her. That's how they met. According to the man, he was in the process of divorce because of a worthless wife. Naturally, he was unhappy. And since he was earning well and gave Amber good gifts, she had already made plans for him. She had to marry William, and at any cost. For a very conflicted Amber, who could not get along with anyone until 40 years old, it was the last chance. So the woman wasn't backing down. Good morning, Kitty, heard the man behind him. Are you awake already? Come here. She held out her arms to him. Amber, I'll finish one thing and we'll have a serious talk, William smiled. Yes, I hope it's about our future, her eyes lit up. Billy, when are we going to be together? About our future, he answered. Except William was going to talk about ending the relationship, not continuing it. Amber pulled her lover toward her. She was happy. She had no doubt that everything would be her way now. Amber had wanted to quit her job for a long time. She was fed up with it already. William looked so much like the kind of man who could provide for Amber. She had been living the dream of him for the last few weeks. Amber was ready to write her resignation letter tomorrow, but she needed assurances. Until William put an engagement ring on her finger, there was a chance he'd run away from her. Amber's sharp tongue scared off even the most patient men who seemed to love her. All in all, the lovers made different plans for each other. William had cooled his passion, and Amber no longer stirred a storm of emotion in him. He quickly turned on his phone and turned pale. Emily had called him many times, and at night. Okay, I need to get to work. The chief has already called several times. He quickly rushed out of the house. What's her problem? He thought as he got in his car and drove away from Amber's house. Around the corner, he stopped. Emily, hi, he heard his wife's voice. I'm sorry, I slept at the site. Didn't hear you call? Billy will talk to you later, she sounded angry. I'm busy right now. William flinched. Something told him that Emily didn't believe his fables. Okay, later means later. He threw the phone down angrily and drove to work. Basically, they had already finished the renovations. They'd had a few days of downtime, and he'd spent all that time at Amber's place, coming over only in the evening so his son wouldn't suspect anything. I should have broken up with her when she told him she was working at the hospital, the man said angrily to himself. God forbid Emily finds out. She wouldn't forgive me this time. I don't need Amber for nothing, but I'm not leaving Emily. The man didn't even see himself contradicting himself. In his mind, it was normal to have an affair on the side and then kiss his wife as if nothing had happened. William thought that if he was living with Emily, it meant he loved her. There are no other options. He drove up to a friend's house with whom they worked together. There was nothing to do, and he didn't want to stay at Amber's place either. She'd already gotten everything she wanted the night before, and William was tired of her. But the mistress herself didn't think so. "Billy, can you get out for half an hour? I really need your help," she called to him. He went outside so his friend wouldn't hear him. "Yeah, I bought something here, something heavy. I need you to come over." The cab didn't want to take me. "All right, where are you?" "I got it. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he promised. Emily was very angry with her husband. She felt like this was all some kind of game. The evidence that William was hiding something was too obvious. His excuses didn't convince her. Emily couldn't find a place to be. She was very tired, but she couldn't sleep. She decided to go downtown to get some distraction, to go shopping. Emily got off the bus with no mood and headed towards the mall. She sat down on a bench. It was nice out, she sighed and looked around, and her gaze fell on the cars standing near the building. In the far corner, she saw some woman kissing her beau. Emily looked closely, but didn't see anything unusual. The lovers were too far away to see them in detail. But a car pulled away, and suddenly Emily saw that it was their passenger car. She had no doubt about it. Cab. She ran up to the car with the checkered license plate. "Please follow that blue Lada, just so they don't see us." "We're in pursuit," laughed the cabbie. "I hope there won't be a shootout." "No," Emily said angrily. "I don't have a gun. I don't carry them in public." The man froze in his seat. He didn't really like the passenger's joke, and they drove for about 20 minutes. William turned down a street. The cabbie followed him. The car stopped and Amber got out. The cab drove past. Emily tried to hide so she wouldn't be seen and saw her husband pulling something heavy out. It was a struggle for the woman to get home. She was torn by unbearable pain. She was alone, screaming for relief. At first she wanted to call her husband and tell him everything, but then she pulled herself together and wrote a message to her son that she would go to work today. She arrived at the hospital that night, asked her shift worker to go home. "Emily, what are you doing here?" Her lips quivered. "I'm fine. I thought I'd let Lily rest. I'll be on duty tonight. Can't you, Alexander?" Looked at her pale face, answered nothing, went to his room. Emily didn't know he was sleeping at the hospital tonight, too. He'd gotten a good night's sleep during the day. While they were gone, a patient had been brought in who urgently needed help. He had to be under constant observation for at least a couple days. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Emily sat in the nurse's room, crying. She didn't want to live, even though all of this was obvious. Emily didn't think she couldn't live through it this time. "I'm sorry, Andrew," she whispered. "Son, but I can't go on like this." She moved the jar of medication toward her. She didn't have the strength to fight anymore. She gave up, brought a mug of water to her lips, trembling, poured the pills on the table. Everyone slept so she would be found dead in the morning. Emily was so absorbed in her pain that she didn't even hear the footsteps. She put the palm of her hand to her mouth with the pills. "What are you doing?" Isaac Alexander rushed to her, grabbed the nurse's hand, and all the pills flew to the floor. "Emily, what's going on?" He squeezed her palm so tightly that she even shrieked. The woman stared at him blankly. The doctor opened the faucet, drew water, poured it over her head with lightning speed. "What are you doing?" "I'm wet." She came to her senses. She waved her hands away from the doctor. Isaac Alexander still managed to wipe her hair with a towel. He pulled the woman against him. Emily hugged him and sobbed loudly. "It's all right," he said in a gentle voice. "Emily, you're going to feel better now." He grabbed the nurse and dragged her into his office. He quickly took out some pills and threw them into a glass of water. Emily managed to drink them down. She was trembling. Isaac Alexander kept stroking her head. She began to calm down. "Thank you," she whispered. "Oh my God, I almost poisoned myself." She didn't even have the strength to cry. Isaac Alexander put her on the couch and stayed with her until she fell asleep. "Stupid girl," he scolded as he returned to his office. "No problem is worth taking your own life." Around 6, Emily opened her eyes and immediately remembered what had happened. She felt both ashamed and hurt that she could have died. She opened the door. Isaac Alexander was asleep. She gazed into his face. It was filled with light. I guess there are angels on earth, after all, she thought. That's how kindness and a desire to help people hide behind coldness and calculating. Isaac Alexander seemed so dear to her. Emily sat quietly in her chair and watched him. She didn't know how much time had passed, but at one point the doctor opened his eyes. "How long?" he asked immediately. "Emily, are you okay?" "Yes, thanks to you, I didn't make a fatal mistake. Otherwise I wouldn't be here," she lowered her eyes. "Can you tell me what happened?" The doctor sat down on the couch. "Judging by what you wanted to do, something serious." "My husband cheated on me." And not for the first time, tears flowed down her cheeks. "When we were still living at home, he had an affair with our neighbor." And now Emily was silent. "And now my husband is having an affair with Amber, remember? She told me at her birthday party that she'd met a prince. Well, it was him. I saw them together. Yeah, it's Santa Barbara." Isaac Alexander scratched his head. "But if he's such an unreliable man, then he's hardly worth you taking your life because of him." "I certainly won't now. It was some kind of obsession. I don't know how to explain it to you. I was in so much pain," she whispered. "I understand. I was in the same situation myself once. After my wife died, I didn't want to live either. I tried slitting my wrists once, but I couldn't. And the second time I wanted to hang myself. But all the time someone held me back. I trusted this force, and now I am grateful to God that he did not allow my death. You have to live, no matter how difficult it is. It's the only way to understand why we've been given all this." Emily calmed down. She realized clearly that she would not stay with William, no matter how much their son suffered. She could never forgive her husband again. By 8, Amber came in, radiant. Emily was as cold to her as ever. "Were you tortured last night?" She was outraged. "Why are you looking at me like I'm the enemy?" Emily went to change. A doctor approached the post nurse. Isaac Alexander asked her to come in to see him. "You wanted to see me?" Amber tossed the doctor nonchalantly. "I see Semyonov hasn't gotten any better." "Yes, but this isn't about him," the doctor replied calmly. "Amber, I'd like us to have a private conversation." The nurse jumped. The first thing that came to her mind was that Isaac Alexander would be imposing on her as a fiancé. "Amber, a bad situation has come up," he began, "and I don't even know how to tell you about it." "What is it?" The woman exclaimed impatiently. "If you want to ask me out, I'm sorry, I'm busy." "That's exactly what this is about. Amber, are you going to marry someone else's husband?" Isaac Alexander's cheekbones flared. "I don't know how this mistake happened, but your fiancé is Emily's husband. She saw you outside the mall yesterday. She followed you in a cab to your house. Her husband gave you a ride," Isaac Alexander pointed out. What a load of crap. Amber jumped out of his office and started calling her lover. "Billy, answer quickly." "Your wife, Emily." William disconnected immediately. Amber tried calling him many more times, but he blocked her number. Emily had already gone home, so she couldn't talk to her in person. William realized he was busted, angry at himself, but he had to get out of it somehow. The best option was to disappear out of sight for a few days for now to figure something out. Amber dialed up her rival. She was insanely angry, except the woman didn't realize that Emily had nothing to do with it at all. "You stupid fool." She yelled into the phone. "Why are you slandering me? Are you trying to make me look bad? You're having an affair with Billy and you want to get rid of witnesses." "Amber, what are you talking about?" Emily tried to talk to her calmly. "Are you the one going out with my husband? I didn't interfere with your family." "You're lying," Amber screamed. "Are you sleeping with that asshole? I saw you. So you're cheating on your husband? The bitch loves my Billy." The woman didn't want to admit she'd been caught. It wasn't even that William had inherently lied to her. Amber didn't want to admit she'd gotten herself into such a messy mess. She just couldn't. Her reputation wouldn't let her. Amber was ready to tear everyone apart. William still hadn't returned her calls. The woman had worked her shift, but she wasn't going to let it go. "Well, I'll show you," she threatened Emily. "The bitch couldn't hold on to a man, and now she's blaming me." Amber had already realized that William was really her husband. But instead of being angry at him, she focused all her hatred on Emily. "I'll show you. You'll be kicked out of the hospital," she threatened. "You idiot. She got a man like that." Emily couldn't reach William either. Her son came home that evening, so she decided to talk to Andrew. "Son," she sighed, "you're a big boy and you understand something about life." Looked at him, mother. "It happens that adults can go their separate ways." "Did you and your father have a fight?" The boy guessed. "I won't get involved. If Dad leaves us, I won't feel guilty anymore," he reassured her. "Thank you," Emily hugged him. "Andrew, I love you so much." She already wanted to fly out of this cage to freedom, and she finally calmed down. She no longer saw any obstacle to staying with her husband. She had endured almost a year for her son's sake, but William had not changed. And Emily had no idea what problems lay ahead. Emily entered the hospital. She hated to cross paths with Amber, but Amber was waiting for her. Remember, she whirled her hands in front of her face. "I'm not to be trifled with. Is it your fault that Billy cheated on you? I know what was really going on between you two. He told me everything. The other guy would have kicked you out of the house a long time ago." She was yelling really loud on purpose. "What did he tell you?" Emily asked with her arms crossed over her chest. "Did he catch me with a man?" "That too," Amber said angrily. "I can see why you got your hands on that robot. Billy told me how you were having an affair with the guy in charge at your house. He wouldn't leave you for your son." The whole hospital was buzzing about Emily sleeping with Isaac Alexander. Naturally, Amber did it deliberately to cover her dirty deeds. Now, there were few people who believed Emily's words, even if she did say that Amber had been out with William. Emily knocked on the door to the doctor's office, walked in and couldn't stand it, covered her face with her hand and sobbed. "Emily, what happened?" He came up to her. "Did your husband hurt you?" "No. Amber told everyone that you and I were lovers. Can you believe it?" She sobbed. "What the hell is that?" He swore. "She's confused about her connections. She can't see what's true and what isn't. And the worst thing is that everyone believes her." Emily looked at him with eyes full of tears. "Idiot." She asked for it. He left the office abruptly. "I'll cut her down." After lunch, the head doctor summoned Amber to his office. Isaac Alexander and Emily were already in the office. Amber Stevens, the chief, addressed her. "On what grounds did you decide that your co-workers were engaging in lewd behavior at work? Did you see it with your own eyes?" Amber really wanted to lie, but she felt the consequences would not be pleasant. "No," she said quietly, her eyes downcast and silent. The head doctor gave her a hard look. Unfortunately, he did something she had not expected. He paused. "You are fired," he said loudly. "Bring a statement, and I'll sign it." "Take it easy," the head doctor said. "Amber, like you are a pond, and real specialists like Isaac Alexander can be counted on the fingers. If you had a brain, you wouldn't be making all this up." Amber walked out of the head doctor's office in crocodile tears, and her career was over. Her job didn't seem so bad now. Amber had gotten a small house from her first husband, so basically she'd settled into life pretty well. Now she had no money and no job. Emily thanked the doctor for his support and got to work. She decided not to wait any longer. Tomorrow morning she would try to find her husband. "Isaac Alexander, let me use your phone to make a call," Emily asked the doctor before leaving. "My husband doesn't take my calls." The doctor handed her the phone and left the office. Emily had a feeling William would answer it for her, since the call could have been from a potential client. "Hello," the wife spoke quickly. "I'm filing for divorce. There can be no talking. Your half of the house I'll buy out." "Okay, I'll be there," William angrily replied and disconnected the phone. Emily drove home with only one question: where would she get the money for the house? Perhaps there was something her parents could do to help her. Maybe he would agree to match the alimony? The thought crossed her mind, though I'd even agree without them, just so he'd be out of my life. Before Emily could enter the house, William appeared on the doorstep. Andrew was already at school. "Please don't be silly," Emily said immediately. "Billy, we're adults. Everything has to be paid for. If you didn't understand anything after the first time, you'll never understand again." William didn't really engage in dialogue. He agreed to give up his share of the alimony. Basically, he was making good money. He packed some things and left. Emily was overjoyed. As she found out later, he'd moved in with Amber. The latter walked around with her head held high and said that she was right all along, but as soon as she got what she wanted, she started acting like she always had. That's why William never even got married. 6 months later, he packed up his things and left in an unknown direction. Amber had no choice but to badmouth him now. It wasn't like she could make a fool of herself. It was always someone else's fault in Amber's life. The relationship between Emily and Isaac Alexander, on the other hand, had become friendlier and warmer. "Emily, come see me," the doctor called her one day. "It's an emergency," he asked. Emily rushed over. The doctor was standing by the window, as he always did. He had a cup of coffee in his hands. "It's my birthday today," he smiled. "Would you like to keep me company? It's been so long since I've celebrated it. Do you want to take Andrew with you?" And go where her eyes lit up. "Isaac Alexander, I suggest someplace quiet." Andrew chatted with his father. To his mother's surprise, he'd gotten through the divorce easily. He was already going on 13. "Young one, sit by yourself," the son replied to her invitation. "You, on the other hand, Isaac Alexander will bring you. You won't be bored alone at home." She hugged him. "Andrew, you're all grown up now, so I understand you two needing to babysit," he laughed. "Ma, I like him." "Nice uncle." Nobody called him uncle for sure, laughed his mother. "Okay, rest up." She ruffled her son's hair. That night was a new phase in the lives of both Emily and Isaac Alexander. 3 months later, they were married. And now Emily was taking care of him, keeping him from working so much. Of course, it was hard for Isaac Alexander to relax after so many years of hard work. But in their lives, there was another circumstance. Emily, almost 40, gave birth to his daughter. Isaac Alexander reduced the load at work to spend more time with his wife and children. They sold Emily's house and the doctor's parents' house, which was empty for many years. So they were able to travel a little and pamper the children. And they tried not to hurt themselves. Isaac Alexander was well paid for consultations in fee-based clinics. And Emily, as soon as her daughter grew up, returned to her home hospital.